Chapter 2175. As time went by, the Cold Sky territory regained its former peace. This kind of peace was relative. In different regions, different cities, and different places, there were frequent killings every day. Turbulence and bloodshed had long been the eternal scene of the Dark World. Silver City. Ji Lung sat in a small tavern, silently thinking about his own matters. A month had passed, but there was no news about Dao Yuan, as if he had disappeared from the world. Where on earth did he go? At the same time, in the Spirit Bottle City. The Spirit Bottle City was one of the 234 cities controlled by the region Lord Huangho, one of the top 10 region lords. On the bustling street, Lin Sun walked out of the city with his hands clasped behind his back. Over the course of a month, he traveled through the territory controlled by region Lord Huangho, and his footprints covered different cities. Now, including the Spirit Bottle City, Lin Sun had visited all the 234 cities controlled by the region Lord Huangho. It's time to meet the region Lord Huangho. Outside the city, Lin Sun breathed a long sigh of relief and teleported away. Fengxiao Mountain, the lair of the region Lord Huangho, compared with the Black Gold Mountain and the Sky Marshal Mountain of the region Lord He Kong. The Fengxiao Mountain was more majestic and lofty. There were many buildings on it, and it was covered with formations. However, in the eyes of a grandmaster of Taoism like Lin Sun, the heavy formations were just decorations. Quietly, Lin Sun walked into the Fengxiao Mountain. On the top of the mountain, there stood an ancient temple, bathed in the sunlight, exuding a sacred and solemn atmosphere. In the temple, the demon Emperor Huangho sat alone in front of a desk, looking at a secret map drawn by an ancient animal skin. He was majestic, with black hair hanging loosely over his shoulders. Dressed in a dark purple robe, he looked domineering, as if he was overlooking the world. Will the tribulation of oblivion really appear 1 year from now? Since ancient times until now, there are only 2 records of this tribulation. Region Lord Huangho's gaze was fixed on the beast's skin as he pondered with a frown. The first time was at the beginning of primordial times. At that time, the world of darkness that encountered this calamity fell into unprecedented turmoil and destruction. It was regarded as the place where the gods were buried. The first time was at the beginning of the ancient times. Calamity descended from the heavens, and all living things were in decline. Ferocious spirits of mutated beasts descended from the heavens and wreaked havoc in the dark world, completely cutting off the dark world's path to the outside world. It also caused the dark world to be like a lone island, isolated from the world of the heavens. What about this time? If the tribulation of oblivion descends, then what sort of terrifying calamity will erupt? Strange, according to the records in this secret scroll, the tribulation of oblivion this time is unlike the previous 2 tribulations. After the calamity, the rebirth of freedom will appear, and it's taken to be the number 1 paradise of rebirth in the ages. Lord Huangho frowned. Nirvana of freedom? The number 1 nirvana of all times? He had never heard of such a thing before. The sound of footsteps rang out. Outside the hall, a tall figure appeared. Region Lord Huangho frowned, and he didn't even raise his head as he said, "Didn't I tell you not to disturb me unless it's urgent?" His voice carried displeasure. "I'm sorry for disturbing you without an invitation." The tall figure walked directly into the hall in a composed manner. Region Lord Huangho suddenly raised his head, while his pupils emitted a frightening glow of lightning. "Who are you?" He put away the bee-skin secret scroll and stood up. His dark purple robe fluttered without any wind, and his entire body was suffused with the pressure of the Emperor realm that was like a tide. Lin Sun said indifferently, "I've come under the orders of region Lord He Kong to summon you to surrender." "Summon me to surrender?" Region Lord Huang Ho almost didn't dare believe his ears. "You said that old man He Kong wants me to submit to him?" Lin Sun nodded. "Exactly." Region Lord Huang Ho laughed out of extreme rage. "Such a scene is too absurd. When did old man He Kong put on such airs? He only sent a single person, yet he dares to come ask me to submit? How did you come in?" Region Lord Huang Ho suddenly realized something. His Fengxiao Mountain was so heavily guarded, but the other party had actually appeared silently. "Of course I walked in," Lin Sun said casually. The anger on Regent Lord Huang Ho's face turned gloomy. He frowned and stared at Lin Sun for a while before he suddenly said, Are you the sword demon Tao Yuan?" "Yes." Lin Sun nodded. He looked extremely calm. As an emperor-level existence in the dark world for many years, Regent Lord Huang Ho had never seen any quasi-emperor who dared to confront him like this. For a moment, he couldn't help feeling a little surprised. Where did this kid get the courage to come here alone and act wildly? The next moment, Regent Lord Huang Ho understood. Clang! Accompanied by a clear and melodious sword sound, he turned into a ray of light and swept out from the sword case behind Lin Sun. It was bright and blazing, and the sword intent was shocking. Regent Lord Huang Ho's pupil shrank, and he waved his sleeve. Boom! An unparalleled black lightning law swept out and turned into a dazzling lightning talisman that shrouded Yi. This talisman was extremely mysterious. It contained the boiling lightning law and evolved into a lightning spirit with a bird's head and human's body, with wings on its back. Its destructive aura was astonishing. As soon as it flashed over, it was like a kingdom of lightning that attacked. He shot out like a rainbow that pierced through the sky, and it tore through the void with peerless ferocity and sharpness. Rip! In just an instant, the lightning talisman was torn apart, and lightning splattered everywhere as it rumbled and collapsed. Regent Lord Huang Ho's pupils shrank, and a flying knife appeared in front of him. It was bright green and flowed with a sharp and terrifying cold light. At this moment, he exerted his full strength and circulated the power of the Emperor level. Dazzling and thick black lightning law coiled around his body, and its power was terrifying to the extreme. Swish! As the green flying knife slashed out, Regent Lord Huang Ho followed closely behind it. It was unbelievably fast. However, there was a deafening clang. The green flying knife was blasted away by the sword, and a wisp of sword chi stopped in front of Regent Lord Huang Ho's throat. It was too fast. It was so fast that Regent Lord Huang Ho had just reacted when the sword chi had already arrived, and his figure stopped and stiffened in the void. He didn't dare to move an inch forward. In the blink of an eye, a sword had suppressed an emperor. Regent Lord Huang Ho's expression changed drastically. He was just about to retreat when the sword chi at his throat suddenly produced a slight buzz and pierced through his skin, causing a stream of blood to gush out. It's just the second level of the Emperor realm. Struggling is futile. Ye's voice was calm, as if he was stating a matter of course. Regent Lord Huang Ho's heart turned cold, and he didn't dare to move at all. He looked at Lin Sun and said in a hoarse voice, "No wonder the old man He Kong was able to annex Xuanning's territory so smoothly. It turns out that he has such an amazing subordinate." Lin Sun smiled slightly. "You flatter me. Should I kill him?" Yi asked. "Knock him out and capture him alive." "All right, Dong." In the next moment, Regent Lord Huang Ho fainted and was imprisoned by Ye's secret method. Lin Sun, look. You suddenly noticed that Regent Lord Huang Ho was still holding an old secret scroll made of animal skin tightly in his hand, even though he had fainted. He withdrew it and passed it to Lin Sun. Lin Sun opened the secret scroll, and there were rows of messy and ancient words written on it. Some of the words were already blurred. Obviously, it had existed for a long time and had been corroded by the passage of time. Lin Sun couldn't help but be stunned after he finished reading it. It turned out that the secret scroll recorded the two tribulations of oblivion that had appeared in the dark world in the past. The first occurred at the beginning of the primeval times. After this tribulation erupted, it caused the dark world to fall into destruction, and numerous terrifying existences that were taken to be like gods were buried beneath the tribulations of oblivion. From then on, the dark world was taken to be the burial place of the gods. The second tribulations of oblivion occurred at the beginning of the primeval times. A calamity descended from the heavens, causing the heavens and the earth to weaken. Numerous variant beasts and ferocious spirits attacked from the outside world, and they destroyed the path that connected the dark world to the outside world. It was also from then on that the dark world was like a lone island that floated outside the ancient path in the starry sky, and it was isolated from the world. Yet now, according to the records of the secret scroll, the tribulations of oblivion would descend once more in around a year's time. However, this time was different from the past, and it was extremely likely that a place called Nirvana of Freedom would appear. Moreover, this place was called the number one place of rebirth throughout the ages. Have you heard of the secrets related to the tribulations of oblivion? Lin Sun couldn't help but ask. Yi shook his head. Lin Sun thought for a moment, yet was unable to figure it out. So he put away the secret scroll and said in his heart, if the third tribulations of oblivion really erupt, then perhaps I'll be able to see it in a year's time. A year is still a long time. When Lin Sun walked out of Phonelight Mountain, he didn't cause any commotion all along the way. It was also on this day. The governors of the 234 cities controlled by Regent Lord Huang Ho announced in unison that they would obey the orders of the Sword Demon Dao Abyss and submit to Regent Lord Haikong. As soon as the news spread, a mighty uproar arose once more in the Cold Sky region that had just been calm for a month, and it caused a great earthquake. What? The Sword Demon Dao Abyss again? Isn't this fellow too ferocious? It's only been a month, yet he's already caused such a great commotion. It's too terrifying. This time, all the cities controlled by Regent Lord Huang Ho actually betrayed him on the same day. How exactly did the Sword Demon Dao Abyss accomplish this? There's surely the support of Regent Lord Haikong behind him. Otherwise, how could he possibly possess such great ability by himself? An uproar resounded, and it was mixed with shock and fear. While everyone was waiting to see how territorial Lord Huang Ho would react, another shocking piece of news came out of nowhere. Regent Lord Huang Ho was suppressed and surrendered to Regent Lord Haikong. It was like a stone that caused 1,000 ripples. This could be said to be earth-shattering, and it caused the other Regent Lords of the Cold Sky region to be unable to sit still. When the territory of Regent Lord Xuanning was annexed, a bloody battle had erupted. But Regent Lord Huang Ho was actually suppressed and surrendered under the circumstances that no one knew about it. This was undoubtedly too unbelievable, and it caused everyone to feel extremely disappointed. It was even to the extent that many people didn't dare believe it and were unable to accept it, and they felt that this news couldn't possibly be true. But as time passed and more news verified it, people finally believed that Regent Lord Huang Ho was indeed defeated, because Regent Lord Huang Ho's shadow had long disappeared from Phonelight Mountain. It was as if he had evaporated from the world and disappeared without a trace. If he was still alive, if he wasn't suppressed, how could he not take action against those traitors? Chapter 2176. When the news spread to the territory controlled by the Haikong Regent Lord, it caused a great commotion. Even those experts who were attached to Regent Lord Haikong couldn't believe that in just a month, another Regent Lord had surrendered to Regent Lord Haikong. The most absurd thing was that they didn't know anything from the beginning until the end. Some people also remember the words that Regent Lord Haikong said before he went into closed-door cultivation a month ago. I've sent Sword Demon Dao Yuan to do something big. You'll know when the time comes. Now, they finally knew. But when they thought that Sword Demon Dao Yuan alone helped Regent Lord Haikong to do such a big thing, they still couldn't help but tremble and be shocked. Isn't that guy too ferocious? What closed-door cultivation? I think Lord Haikong went to Regent Lord Huang Ho's territory alone. Otherwise, how could Sword Demon Dao Yuan defeat Regent Lord Huang Ho alone? Someone made such a deduction, and it quickly gained the agreement of most people. This was the only explanation that made sense. What Regent Lord Haikong? It must be done by Senior Dao Yuan alone. When Ji Long got the news, he immediately predicted that this matter was destined to have nothing to do with Regent Lord Haikong. However, when he thought that even Regent Lord Huang Ho wasn't a match for Senior Dao Yuan, Ji Long couldn't help but be shocked. Strong. Too strong. In just a month, a person alone annexed a Regent Lord's force. After this incident, the name of Sword Demon Dao Yuan completely resounded in the sky of the Cold Sky territory. Of course, Whenever he was mentioned, Region Lord Haekong would be mentioned. No one thought that Region Lord Haekong would accept such an outstanding subordinate. To the other Region Lords of the Cold Sky Territory, Region Lord Haekong had become a great threat. 1 month ago, he annexed Region Lord Xue Ning's territory. 1 month later, he annexed Region Lord Huang Ho's territory. This speed of expansion was simply shocking. No one could be sure if such a thing would happen again in the next month. This old man Haekong's behavior is too unsightly. I can't just sit here and wait for death. On Mount Machi, Region Lord Lin Feng's expression was gloomy. He had a thin figure and the appearance of a young man. He had striking crimson hair, and as his pupils opened and closed, terrifying phenomena of incinerating the heavens and the earth floated up into appearance. His territory was right next to Region Lord Huang Ho's, and the other side was bordered by Region Lord Xue Ning's territory. This made him worry that the next target of Haekong's annexation would fall on his head. Report. A hurried voice sounded outside the hall. My lord, Domain Lord Nethermoon, Domain Lord Feiya, and Domain Lord Huishuang have come together to visit you. They are now waiting outside the mountain gate. The Cold Wind Region Lord was startled. Then he revealed a joyful expression and said, Quickly invite him in. He had a premonition in his heart that these 3 Region Lords had probably been provoked by Region Lord Haekong and felt extremely threatened. Not long after, 3 figures appeared outside the hall. A thin old man with yellow hair and a dignified appearance held a blood-red horsetail whisk in his hand, and his eyes were suffused with a strange dark blue glow. This was the Lord of the Nethermoon Domain. A burly middle-aged man in dark armor with a fierce and rugged appearance walked like a moving divine mountain, giving off an incomparably oppressive feeling. This was Region Lord Feiya. The other figure was petite and exquisite, with long hair coiled into a bun. Her appearance was outstanding, and her expression was aloof and cold. She was Region Lord Huishuang. These 3 were all Emperor Realm existences who had been in the Cold Sky Territory for many years. They had experienced the ups and downs of danger and were used to seeing blood and wind. But at this moment, there was a trace of haze on their faces. Quickly invite the 3 of you in. The Cold Wind Region Lord welcomed them into the hall and took their seats. Fellow Lin Feng, you must have guessed our purpose of coming, so there's no harm in saying it directly. The Nethermoon Region Lord, who looked like an old man but had frightening eyes, said in a deep voice, We came here to invite fellow Taoists to join us to destroy that old man Haekong. There was undisguised, killing intent in his voice. That's right. The Cold Sky Territory was originally controlled by us 10 Region Lords. Although there were occasional conflicts and frictions between us, it was within an acceptable range. Region Lord Feiya gritted her teeth and said, However, this old geezer Haekong has successively swallowed the territories of fellow Taoists Xue Ning and Huang Ho within 2 months of time. Such actions are simply rampant and arrogant to the extreme. In my opinion, if we don't do something to stop him, I'm afraid our territories will be invaded and swallowed by this old man one by one. Region Lord Huishuang's expression was cold, and her words were full of anger. The balance of the past had been broken. Like stormy waves in a pool of autumn water, everyone was bound to be inevitably affected. The Cold Wind Region Lord did not immediately agree, but asked fellow Taoists, what does fellow Taoist Feng Tu mean? Fellow Taoist Feng Tu was Demon Emperor Feng Tu, the first Region Lord of the Cold Sky Territory. At the same time, he was also an elder of the divine, illuminating ancient sect. This made Demon Emperor Feng Tu's status in the Cold Sky Territory extremely high. Him? Ming Yu sneered. He's busy dispatching his forces to coordinate with the divine illumination ancient sect's order to search for the successor of Mount Fengsuan. He doesn't have time to care about this. Region Master Feiya said, Brother Feng Tu is from the godly illuminating ancient sect, so he wouldn't worry about Haekong attacking him. Unlike us, we can only rely on ourselves if we want to survive in the Frigid Sky region. I see. The Cold Wind Region Lord immediately understood. Fellow Taoist, if the 4 of us attack together, it's sufficient to easily annihilate Old Man Haekong. There's utterly no need to look for other helpers. Region Mistress Hui Shuang said, "Moreover, after we annihilate old Geezer He Kong, the territory under his command will naturally be divided among the four of us. At that time, if others want to encroach on it, they'll have to ask us first." Ling Feng was greatly tempted by these words. Now, besides the territory that originally belonged to He Tong, Region Lord Xuan Ning, and Region Lord Huang Ho also possessed the territories of Region Lord He Tong. Just a number of Dao crystal that could be collected every day in these territories was enough to make anyone drool. "All right, let's do that." Ling Feng readily agreed. Not only would he be able to kill Old Man He Kong and deal with a potential great threat, but he would also be able to obtain great benefits. This caused him to suddenly feel that this operation was killing two birds with one stone instead of a great thing. Seeing this, the Nethermoon Region Lord and the other two laughed. "What do we act?" the Cold Wind Region Lord asked. "There's no time to lose. Let's go now." The Nethermoon Region Lord stood up, his pair of demonic blue eyes filled with murderous intent. One day later, Tianwu Mountain, the Nethermoon Region Lord and the other three arrived through the void. Each of them revealed the terrifying power that belonged to the Emperor realm, and their murderous intent covered the entire area. When they saw this scene, the experts under the He Kong Region Lord were all scared out of their wits, as if they had fallen into an ice cave. It's over. No one had expected that revenge would come so quickly. Moreover, an entire 4 Region Lords had come to kill them all at once. This was simply a calamity that could cause anyone to feel despair. "Old Man He Kong, get out here!" the Nethermoon Region Lord bellowed, his voice like thunder, resounding through the world. The entire Tianwu Mountain was in chaos. Many figures were fleeing for their lives, lest they be affected by the impending war. Even Quasi-Emperor Lai Guang chose to flee at the first moment. There was simply no way to resist. Resisting was akin to a mantis trying to stop a chariot. It was no different from courting death. In this dangerous and turbulent dark world, the most valuable thing was loyalty, and the least valuable thing was also loyalty. It was not uncommon for people to flee in the face of disaster. The Nethermoon Region Lord and the others ignored those who fled. They knew very well that as long as they killed the He Kong Region Lord, the forces controlled by the He Kong Region Lord would fall apart overnight. Without a leader, the monkeys would scatter when the tree falls. However, what the Nethermoon Region Lord and the others did not expect was that when they broke into the Tianwu Mountain and searched everywhere, they did not see the He Kong Region Lord. Feiya's face darkened. "Damn it, that old thing is not here." Could it be that he also sensed that something was wrong and hid? They had come aggressively, but who would have thought that they would not find the target's lair? Damn it! The Cold Wind Region Lord was so angry that he struck out with his palm. Boom! The towering, majestic Tianwu Mountain was smashed into pieces and turned into dust that filled the sky. The Cold Wind Region Lord gritted his teeth. "If we can't find the Old Man He Kong, even if we destroy all the forces under his command, he will make a comeback sooner or later." The Nethermoon Region Lord and the others also looked ugly. If the Old Man He Kong did not die, once he learned that the 4 of them had joined forces to kill him, how could he not retaliate? The thought of the encounter of Xuan Ning and Huang Ho made the Nethermoon Region Lord and the others feel depressed. "Everyone, we must find the Old Man He Kong as soon as possible. Otherwise, the longer we delay, the more disadvantageous it will be for us." Taking a deep breath, Domain Lord Hui Shuang said coldly. The Cold Wind Region Master said, "If that Old Man He Kong wants to hide, how can we find him?" "That's easy." The Nethermoon Region Lord gritted his teeth and said, "Let's go together and slaughter in the Old Man He Kong's territory. If we destroy all the forces under his command, how can he not show up?" Feiya's expression changed. "That's too cruel. What if the Old Man He Kong goes crazy and kills his way to our territory to retaliate? Now that things have come to this, how can we care about this?" The Cold Wind Region Lord's expression was ruthless. "As long as we can force the Old Man He Kong out and kill him, we can get rid of him once and for all. Otherwise, we won't be able to eat and sleep in peace in the future." On this day, for Domain Lord attacked like a storm, wreaking havoc in the territory of the Haikong region lord, setting off a bloody massacre. How could an Emperor Realm expert be ordinary? What's more, four Emperor Realm experts attacked together. In less than a day, the territory of the Haikong region lord fell into chaos. Fleeing figures were everywhere. Crazy. Those domain lords are all crazy. When he heard the news, Jilong was also bitterly disappointed. He never thought that the revenge of those domain lords would come so quickly, and so ruthlessly and coldly. What about Senior Dao Yuan? Where is he now? Jilong was anxious. P.S. The 5th update is here. Continue tomorrow. Chapter 2177. There was no good or evil, black or white, right or wrong in the dark world. There was only life and death. In order to force Haikong out, Mingyu, Lin Feng, Fei Ye, and Hui Shuang, who were Emperor Realm existences, could mercilessly slaughter the subordinates of Haikong without any scruples. In the dark world, all living beings were like grass. Gale City. The streets were empty and desolate, and no one could be seen. It was dusk, and the afterglow was like blood. On top of the city wall, the four domain lords were either sitting or standing, emitting Emperor Realm aura that covered the sky and earth. It was like a forbidden area that ghosts and gods dared not cross. I didn't expect Haikong to be able to endure. Nethermoon domain lord sighed. Fei's expression was gloomy. If my subordinates die, I can win them over and cultivate them in the future. If Haikong dies, there will be nothing left. It had been 3 days. In the past 3 days, they had joined forces to roam the territory of Region Lord Haikong. They were like a whirlwind sweeping away the clouds as they slaughtered everywhere. Any powerhouse who had a relationship with Haikong Territory Lord would be their target to kill. Up until now, almost all the subordinates that had once attached themselves to Region Lord Haikong had been killed by them. But until now, there was no movement from Haikong at all. Nethermoon Domain Lord suddenly asked, Taoist Hui Shuang, have you found out the whereabouts of Sword Demon Dao Abyss? The others also looked at Domain Lord Hui Shuang. Sword Demon Dao Abyss, an expert who suddenly rose like a comet a few months ago, was regarded as the most outstanding general under Haikong's command. Now, even Emperor Realm existences like Nethermoon Domain Lord were familiar with this name. This made them very clear that as long as they captured Sword Demon Dao Abyss, they might be able to force Haikong out. No, this person's whereabouts are erratic. Almost no one knows where he went. When Domain Lord Hui Shuang spoke up to hear, she changed the topic. However, someone said that a great sage called Jilong has been serving the Sword Demon Dao Abyss. Moreover, Jilong appeared in Silver City not long ago. Where is Silver City? 39,000 miles from here. There's no time to lose. Instead of waiting here, it's better to try our luck. The group of people immediately made a decision. However, just as they were about to take action, they suddenly noticed a figure walking over from the vast mountains and rivers far away from the city. His tall figure bathed beneath the rays of the setting sun and was suffused with a mysterious and ethereal aura. The Nethermoon Domain Lord and the others revealed a look of surprise. When they arrived at Gale City, all the cultivators within and outside the city had fled in panic like stray dogs. But now, someone had actually taken the initiative to come over, and this was undoubtedly very unusual. A cold light flashed in Domain Master Hui Shuang's eyes. It's him, that Sword Demon Dao Abyss. I've seen his portrait before. Sword Demon Dao Abyss. The Nethermoon Domain Lord and the others were startled. They were just about to go look for this boy, but who would have thought that he would take the initiative to come to them? I've searched far and wide for it, only to find it by chance. Region Master Fei Ye laughed, and joy flashed in her eyes. Why do I feel that the situation isn't right? The cold wind Region Master frowned. Although they didn't pay attention to a character like Sword Demon Dao Abyss, how could he have such a reputation? It was impossible for such a character to be stupid enough to come to die. Don't act rashly, the Nethermoon Domain Lord said calmly. No matter what this boy is up to, since he is here, perhaps it proves that Haikong can't sit still. The others nodded. The four emperors who had experienced many dangers and lived in the dark world for many years were naturally not afraid of a quasi-emperor Jushi. When Lin Sun's figure arrived at a place thousands of meters away from the city, he stood in the void. He carried the ancient bronze sword case on his back. His figure was tall, and his black eyes were clear. He sighed softly. "I'm really ashamed. I went to Fengsha Mountain before, and when I came here in a hurry, I found that I've kept you waiting for a long time." Fengsha Mountain. This was the lair of the Cold Wind Region Lord. For a moment, the Nethermoon Domain Lord and the others were shocked. A few days ago, the territory of the Yellow Marquee Region Lord had just been annexed by He Kong, and now the sword demon Dao Abyss appeared in the territory controlled by the Cold Wind Region Lord. Did this mean that He Kong had already begun to annex the territory of the Cold Wind Region Lord? Little thing, don't be alarmist. Do you want to break into Fengsha Mountain? It's ridiculous. The Cold Wind Region Lord's voice was like a thunder, shaking the world. Lin Sun looked calm. It doesn't matter now whether it's ridiculous or not. What's important is that the four of you are here together, so I don't have to work hard anymore. It's a good thing. You don't want to deal with the four of us alone? The Nethermoon Domain Lord showed a look of disbelief. The other region lords were also stunned. Lin Sun patted the sword case on his back and said, "There is a sword in it. Please have a look." Clang! The sound of the sword was like a tide, resounding through the sky. As the leaf flew out of the sword box, a boundlessly terrifying sword intent spread out. It was extremely sharp and extremely ferocious. The astonishment on the faces of the Nethermoon Region Lord and the others froze. They finally understood why such a peerless quasi-emperor dared to come alone so fearlessly. The aura of the sword spirit was so strong that it shook the stars. The sword intent stretched across the sky, making them feel a stabbing pain in their bodies and extremely depressed. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed that a sword spirit could have such a fierce and heaven-defying momentum. 1, 2, 3, 4, but none of them is above the third level of the Emperor realm. You seemed a little disappointed inside. Lin Sun, do you believe that I can suppress them all with just one sword? One sword? The corner of Lin Sun's mouth twitched. He had never been a sword spirit who liked to boast. Since he said so, he naturally had great confidence. However, when he thought that Yi dared to suppress 4 region lords with one sword, Lin Sun couldn't help but feel a little uneasy. At the same time, the faces of the Nethermoon Region Lord and the others became gloomy. Their eyes flickered with surprise, anger, and doubt. Ye's words deeply hurt their self-esteem as Emperor Realm experts, a feeling they hadn't experienced for a long time. "Let's do it together," the Nethermoon Region Lord said in a low voice. "Good." The other region lords revealed a fierce look. As they operated their chi, the terrifying pressure of the Emperor Realm spread like a landslide and tsunami, covering the mountains and rivers. Under their feet, in the huge Liaguang city, countless buildings burst into pieces, the streets sank, and the city walls collapsed. In a flash, the city turned into ruins filled with smoke and dust. Just the power of the Emperor Realm was enough to destroy a city. Lin Sun stood motionless. His vision and divine sense were suppressed by the terrible power of the Emperor Realm, and he felt an unprecedented sense of suffocation. This made him realize that even with his current cultivation, he had the foundation to compete with the first level of the Emperor Realm. But in the face of 4 Emperor Realm experts who had countless killing experiences and were at their peak state, he still seemed too weak. The most important thing was that none of the opponents were at the first level of the Emperor Realm. It was extremely rare for Lin Sun to be able to stand there steadily. He was sure that if it was someone else in the same realm, it would be impossible for them to perform better than him. Boom! The battle broke out without any suspense. The world was shaking, and the vast mountains and rivers nearby were affected by the terrible impact. They were erased from the earth like a piece of paper. The sound of the Tao roared, and the blazing Emperor Realm law penetrated the 9 heavens and 10 earths, crushing the universe. Such a scene could shake the ages and make all living beings tremble. In the face of this terrible scene, Yi shook his wrist, looked solemn, and whispered, "My sword can reach." When the voice sounded, a sword chi swept out. This vast and chaotic world was illuminated by a ray of light, suppressing everything and becoming the only immortal. Heaven and earth decline. When this sword chi fell, a shocking scene appeared. The sky, the earth, and everything in the world, like withered leaves, turned into ashes and annihilated in the endless sword light. If the world was a painting, then this sword was like a fire, burning the painting to ashes. It was terrible. It was incredible. After a long time, when the smoke and dust dispersed, when the scenes of chaos and destruction disappeared, the true appearance of the world was revealed. All directions had already been reduced to ruins. Everywhere was a scene of collapse, exhaustion, and destruction. A gust of wind blew, and there was still a heart-palpitating aura in the void. Lin Sun, who stood alone on the ruins, seemed to wake up from a dream and let out a long breath. And in his eyes, there was lingering shock. The power of the Emperor realm destroyed a city, and Yi suppressed 4 emperors with one sword. At this time, Lin Sun clearly saw that Mingyu, Lin Feng, Fei Ye, and Hui Shuang were all lying in the ruins, bleeding all over, seriously injured, and dying. This was the power of Ye's sword. Lin Sun was also a person who had seen the world. He had experienced the game of chess and witnessed the great power of the senior brothers and sisters of Mountain Heart. But at this moment, he couldn't help but be amazed by Ye's sword. "If I were at my peak, I wouldn't be so tired." He stood on Lin Sun's shoulder, gasped several times, and said seriously. It seemed that he was not very satisfied with his sword. Lin Sun's lips twitched. What else could he say? On this day, Mingyu, Lin Feng, Fei Ye, and Hui Shuang were all suppressed in the territory of Heikong. As soon as the news came out, the Cold Sky territory was shocked, and countless strongmen were shocked. Until now, in just 2 months, Heikong had annexed the territories of Xuanning and Huanghe and destroyed the joint attack of the 4. Such an achievement that was sufficient to shine for 1,000 years and shock the ages even caused others to feel as if they were dreaming, and it was so unreal. When did Heikong become so powerful? This was the doubt of countless people. After all, in those years, although Heikong was powerful, he could barely rank in the middle among the top 10. But now, in just 2 months, he expanded his territory like a hot knife through butter and defeated 6 regional lords one after another. He seemed to be a completely different person. P.S. After posting 5 updates yesterday, I only received a dozen or so monthly votes in one day. What a miserable comparison. Chapter 2178. The name of Heikong shook the Cold Sky territory. The fame of Lin Sun's Sword Demon Abyss also spread further. Although he was not at the peak, he was a dazzling figure that everyone knew. But no one knew that Heikong, Xuanning, Huanghe, and Mingyu were all suppressed in the Tower of Ceaseless Way. Jilong vaguely guessed some of the secrets, but he didn't dare to think too much about it, because the truth was so terrible that he could only pretend to be ignorant. After this earth-shattering battle, the Black Serpent Region Lord's exceptionally eye-catching battle finally attracted the attention of the first Region Lord of the Cold Sky Domain, the Wind Slaughter Demon Emperor. Miaoyan Mountain, the place where Wind Slaughter Demon Emperor resided. Fellow Wind Slaughter, if you don't stop it, I'm afraid the Cold Sky territory will belong to Heikong in the future. In a palace, an old man in a gray robe and a feather crown said with a face full of indignation. That's right. The 2 of us have come this time to listen to fellow Feng Tu's suggestion and make a decision regarding Heikong's evil deeds. Another man in a luxurious robe with eyes as sharp as swords said. The old man in a gray robe and this man were Red Rain Region Lord and Xiancheng Region Lord of the Cold Sky territory. At present, in the Cold Sky territory, only the territory controlled by Wind Slaughter Demon Emperor and them hadn't been annexed. However, if the lips were gone, the teeth would be cold. Seeing the expansion of the Black Serpent Region Lord's power like a single spark setting a prairie ablaze, the 2 region lords completely panicked. Therefore, they came to visit together, hoping that Wind Slaughter Demon Emperor could stop all this. This old man He Kong has gone too far. Wind Slaughter, Demon Emperor, sitting in the seat of honor, said in a majestic voice. He had white hair, triangular eyes, a hooked nose, and wore a navy blue robe, exuding a cold and frightening aura. He said indifferently, "Don't panic. Now that things have come to this, I won't stand by and watch, and I won't let He Kong act recklessly." Red Rain Region Lord and Xianchong Region Lord were shocked. The Windfall Demon Emperor was the strongest amongst the 10 great territory lords, and he'd stepped into the 3rd level of the Emperor realm a long time ago. Most importantly, the Wind Massacre Demon Emperor was an elder of the godly, illuminating ancient sect. With this identity, no one in the realm of Cold Sky would dare to offend him. After all, the realm of Cold Sky was under the control of the divine, illuminating ancient sect. Men, send a message to me. Tell that old man He Tung to come and beg for forgiveness within 3 days. If he doesn't come, then he'll have to bear the consequences. The Wind Massacre Demon Emperor spoke, his voice echoing throughout the hall. Offer a humble apology? Isn't that letting that old thing off too easily? Region Mistress Red Rain was puzzled. The wind-slaying demon monarch said slowly, "This is only a test. If he comes here to repent and beg for forgiveness, it proves that he still has respect for the godly, illuminating ancient sect. I will not threaten him with death." But what if he doesn't come? Region Master Xianchong asked. Wind Massacre Demon Monarch said expressionlessly, "That will be the time of He Kong's destruction." On this day, Demon Monarch Feng Tu sent a secret letter to the godly illuminating ancient sect to report He Kong's evil deeds. He requested for the godly illuminating ancient sect to send experts to suppress him. The godly illuminating ancient sect. It was established in a vast and sacred arcane realm. This arcane realm was filled with spiritual mountains, rivers, and grotto heavens. Divine light shone down, auspicious clouds swirled, and even the air was filled with a thick, chaotic aura. Compared to the world of darkness, where chi was sparse and resources were scarce, it was like a legendary paradise. This was the reason why the godly, illuminating ancient sect was one of the 3 leaders of the dark world. The truth was, this arcane realm was not a natural land of fortune. It was created by the combined efforts of the godly, illuminating ancient sect's elders. There were rumors in the outside world that the godly, illuminating ancient sect had to consume hundreds of millions of Taoist crystals just to maintain the operation of this arcane realm. Inside a dojo, green bamboos danced in the wind, and auspicious light shone down. A group of figures were sitting casually. The one sitting in the middle was a handsome man wearing a wide-sleeved robe. His black hair draped loosely over his shoulders, and his eyes were deep and dazzling. Strands of the laws of the grand Tao coiled around him like an illusory dream, and then a completely round wheel of light appeared behind him. The light wheel revolved and formed the phenomenon of the world. The sect master of the godly, illuminating ancient sect, Yu Kuan-zi, a supreme figure that had presided over the world of darkness for countless years, and he was called the Hand of Darkness. The other figures that sat on the dojo were all great figures of the godly, illuminating ancient sect. Every single one of them possessed a supreme and dignified aura, and a slight movement from them could cause the world of darkness to tremble. Everyone, the 3rd tribulation of oblivion in the history of the world of darkness will descend a year from now, and a legendary rebirth of freedom will appear along with it. This is both a supreme fortune and an unpredictable calamity. According to the news I've received, the all-heavens forces on the starry sky ancient path have already begun to make preparations for this. Yu Kuan-zi's voice resounded like the morning bell and the evening drum, and it drifted through the heavens and the earth. Our godly illuminating ancient sect is naturally planning for this as well. All the great figures present here had various thoughts in their minds. The path of the eternal exalt, rebirth of freedom. The eternal tribulation of oblivion. A single lotus blooms. This was a Taoist poem that had been passed down from the very beginning of the primeval times, and it was related to the tribulation of oblivion. It contained profundities within it, and it caused one's imagination to run wild. The tribulation of oblivion was the tribulation of oblivion that had descended into the world of darkness at the very beginning of the primeval times and primeval times. No matter if it was Buddhist cultivators or other sects, lotus flowers were taken to be auspicious divine objects, and they represented fortune and fortune. The only thing that was difficult to figure out yet extremely tempting was perhaps the meaning of the path of an exalt. At this point in the universe, regardless of which sect or senior it was, all of them felt that the eternal path to the exalted realm would appear in nirvanic freedom. As for exactly what this path of an exalt looked like, and what sort of profundities it contained, no one was able to give a clear answer. Suddenly, someone asked, "Sect Master, is this tribulation of oblivion related to the order of the forbidden path?" Just these words caused the pupils of everyone present here to constrict. Presently, once the energy of the order of the forbidden path was controlled once more by Heavenly Emperor Shur, it caused one's heart to palpitate. It's probably not related. Yu Kuan-Zi's eyes surged with a divine glow. Everyone, don't forget that at the very beginning of the primeval times, when the first tribulation of oblivion descended, the energy of the order of the forbidden path that came from the other side of the starry sky hadn't appeared on the ancient starry sky path. Someone asked, "Speaking of the order of the forbidden path, is there any news about the disciple of Mount Inner Heart, Lin Sun?" Lin Sun. Yu Kuan-Zi went silent for a short moment before he said, "The forces of our divine illumination sect, the Hidden Land Realm, and Copper Sparrow Pavilion throughout the entire world are searching for this kid's whereabouts. I heard that merely a few thousand people have been captured from the territories controlled by the Hidden Land Realm. Unfortunately, none of them are the disciple of Mount Inner Heart, Lin Sun. The territories controlled by our divine illumination sect are more or less the same. But everyone knows that the world of darkness has always been a place of refuge for fugitives, and countless bloody battles erupt there every single day. No power would go all out to search for this kid. Most importantly, the power that this kid possesses now is different from before. When he was in the primordial world, he already possessed the ability to kill an Emperor Realm figure. Now that he's in the world of darkness, if he wants to hide, there's practically no chance of catching him." When he spoke up here, Yu Kuan-Zi couldn't help but sigh. The other great figures of the divine illumination sect frowned. Someone asked, "What about Copper Sparrow Pavilion?" They've always boasted of being the guardians of the order of the world of darkness, especially their tower master. He's arrogant to the point of looking down on everyone. With their strength, they can't even find the slightest clue. Copper Sparrow Pavilion? A cold light flashed in Yu Kuan-Zi's eyes, and he said disdainfully, "There's no need to count on it. If we're talking about the most arrogant person in the world of darkness, then it's definitely the Copper Sparrow Pavilion Master. But no matter how arrogant and domineering he is, he's long gone into hiding." Everyone couldn't help but laugh. The last time Shur Tiandi came to the world of darkness, he'd asked the Copper Sparrow Pavilion Master to pay a visit. But in the end, the Copper Sparrow Pavilion spread the news that the Copper Sparrow Pavilion Master had already gone to the other side of the starry sky. When Shur Tiandi learned of this, he only said one sentence: "If he doesn't come to pay a visit today, I'll make him bring his head to me in the future." It was also because of this that the Divine Illumination Ancient Sect and the Hidden Land Realm realized that the Copper Sparrow Pavilion had completely offended Shur Tiandi, and it wouldn't be long before they encountered a great crisis. It's a pity that I don't know what Shur Tiandi was thinking. Not long after arriving in the world of darkness, he left in a hurry and headed for the ultimate. Otherwise, no matter where the Copper Sparrow Pavilion Master was hiding, he would probably be found by Shur Tiandi immediately. Yu Kuan-Zi said with some regret, "Does the sect master know why Shur Tiandi went to the ultimate?" A great ancestor asked. "Who can guess the thoughts of supreme existence like him?" Yu Kuan-Zi shook his head. However, as you all know, the mountain sect of Fongsuan used to be entrenched in the ultimate. Although it was destroyed in ancient times, it was still the location of the ancestral court of Fongsuan. I suspect that the purpose of Shi Tiandi going to the ultimate is to investigate something there. As they were talking, someone suddenly came to report, Lord Sect Master, Elder Feng Tu of the domain of Cold Sky has sent a message. A jade letter was delivered to Yu Kuanzi. Yu Kuanzi opened the letter and immediately raised his eyebrows. A small domain master almost conquered an entire domain in 2 months. No wonder Feng Tu couldn't sit still and asked for help from the sect. At this point, Yu Kuanzi raised the letter in his hand and glanced at the big shots present. Something unexpected has happened in the domain of Cold Sky. Who is willing to go there? As soon as he finished speaking, a tall and skinny man in a black robe stood up. After a long stretch, he said unhurriedly, I haven't been out for a long time. This matter, let me handle it. Everyone present was startled. Chapter 2179. Silver City. In the city governor's mansion, a spirit-gathering formation rumbled and ran. Countless Taoist gems turned into a torrent of spiritual energy and were absorbed by Lin Sun, who was sitting cross-legged in the formation. The spiritual energy in the dark world was thin and barren, so Lin Sun had to rely on cultivation resources to meet his needs. Moreover, he had a strong foundation, and the resources he needed for cultivation were amazing, far beyond those in the same realm. Fortunately, he had fought in the north and south during these 2 months and plundered the wealth of city after city, so he didn't have to worry about cultivating. For example, the Taoist gems he had now reached more than 180 billion. Most of them came from the 7 region lords, including Heitong and Xuanning. They had been operating in the Cold Sky territory for many years, and each of them had accumulated an amazing amount of wealth. Now, they all fell into Lin Sun's pocket. Of course, in addition to the Taoist gems, Lin Sun also got some other treasures, such as elixirs, rare treasures, and sovereign weapons, which were priceless. But Lin Sun didn't dare to be satisfied. First, he needed a steady stream of resources for his cultivation, and second, Wu Kei and the Broken Blade Spirit also needed to refine sovereign weapons to restore their vitality. Perhaps Lin Sun didn't have to worry about Yezi the most. With the bronze sword box, Yezi seemed to have found a paradise. He could practice swordsmanship and restore his vitality at the same time. Boom! Several hours later, the spirit-gathering formation stopped running, and the power contained in a total of 490,000 Taoist gems was absorbed by Lin Sun and turned into powder. Whoosh! Whoosh! As Lin Sun thought of it, Greenwood Taoist body, Scarlet Fire Taoist body, and Blackwater Taoist body emerged one by one and sat on one side. Among them, Blackwater Taoist body had just condensed its consciousness and cultivation a few days ago. At that time, Lin Sun imparted some of his inherited Taoist scriptures to Blackwater Taoist body. After the 3 Taoist bodies appeared, they all transmitted a wave of consciousness and had a wonderful communication with Lin Sun's spirit. Suddenly, all kinds of insights and wonderful methods emerged in Lin Sun's mind like a tide and turned into a part of his own cultivation. And Lin Sun's cultivation and power of the Great Path also produced a kind of feedback, which was comprehended by the 3 Great Path avatars one by one. In this mutual resonance and blended comprehension, Lin Sun's cultivation was like overflowing water, naturally breaking through to the 3rd heaven of Quasi-Emperor. At this instant, the vital energy in his body seethed and roared while boundless light of the Tao flowed and seethed, and his terrifying, imposing aura that rose steadily caused this expanse of the heavens and the earth to suddenly tremble. If he had not laid down the restrictive array, this kind of movement alone would have caused unimaginable damage to Silver City. After a long while, the strange phenomenon around Lin Sun's body quieted down little by little. His whole body was full of qi, and his whole body glowed with a kind of ethereal aura like an immortal. Just a breath was enough to make the nearby void tremble like ripples. That kind of invisible power was especially powerful. Lin Sun clearly felt that compared with before, his combat power was far more than doubled. This sort of strength wasn't just a breakthrough in his cultivation. It was also a tremendous transformation in his own understanding and comprehension of the Grand Tao and his understanding and grasp of Tao arts. My Tao is even closer to being flawless, Lin Sun carefully experienced. The law of the great Tao controlled by a quasi-emperor was regarded as an incomplete law of the emperor realm. But since Lin Sun set foot on the peak of the quasi-emperor realm, the law of the quasi-emperor he controlled was almost complete and was not much different from the real law of the emperor realm. And at this time, with the transformation of his own cultivation, with a deeper understanding of the great Tao, the law of the quasi-emperor he controlled, except for the limitation of his own cultivation, was almost no different from the real law of the emperor realm. This was undoubtedly incredible. His cultivation had not yet reached the emperor realm, but the power of the great Tao he controlled was almost the same as that of the emperor realm. From ancient times to the present, there had never been a quasi-emperor who could achieve this step. It was not an exaggeration to call it unprecedented, unparalleled. It's time to try to see what level my strength has reached now. Lin Sun got up and left the city lord's mansion. An hour later, in a vast stretch of mountains and rivers far away from Silver City, an earth-shattering battle had just come to an end. Here, mountains collapsed, rocks turned to ash, and there was chaos and turbulence. The Sword Emperor of the Chaotic Sky had a bloody nose and a swollen face. He crawled up from the ground and raised his head with difficulty, his expression full of confusion. Ever since he was suppressed in the Great Tao Bottomless Tower, he was like a prisoner reduced to a living target of Lin Sun, used when needed and directly thrown aside when not needed. And just now, he once again became a living target, used by Lin Sun to test his own combat strength. This time, he did not interfere, allowing the Sword Emperor of the Chaotic Sky to exert his full combat strength. But in the end, he was suppressed. This blow was too great for the Sword Emperor of the Chaotic Sky to accept. It should be known that back in the Hongmeng world, Lin Sun could only fight against him at most with 40% of his combat strength. But now, only about half a year had passed, and he was still no match for Lin Sun, even if he exerted his full combat strength. A quasi-emperor who could suppress an emperor realm expert, if this news were spread, was bound to break the inherent understanding of the world and subvert the views of all cultivators. The emperor realm was like a natural moat that could not be crossed, but at least in today's world, there was one person who had crossed it. At the same time, Lin Sun was lost in thought. The Sword Emperor of the Chaotic Sky was seriously injured after all, and even if he went all out, he could not be compared to his peak. And it was under such circumstances that although he was not injured when he defeated the opponent, he had consumed most of his strength. Lin Sun was thinking, if he were to face an expert at the peak of the first level of the Emperor realm with his current combat strength, what were the chances of winning? If the three great Tao doppelgangers were to be dispatched together, and together with the deity, would there be a greater chance of winning? Similarly, if he used the immeasurable saber, infinite bottle, and other killing weapons, would there be a greater chance of winning? The only thing Lin Sun could be sure of was that if he used the forbidden passing magical power, it would not be difficult to kill such an Emperor Realm expert. Phew, after a while, Lin Sun let out a long breath and suddenly said, Sword Emperor of the Chaotic Sky, if you are willing to surrender to me, I will not treat you unfairly in the future. Think about it carefully. The Sword Emperor of the Chaotic Sky was taken aback, and before he could react, he was once again suppressed into the Great Tao Bottomless Tower. When Lin Sun returned to Silver City, Ji Lung had already been waiting there anxiously. Senior, things are not good. The wind-killing demon emperor has ordered that the region Lord He Kong should go to Miaoyun Mountain to apologize within 3 days. Ji Lung quickly told the news he had just received. Otherwise, he will be at his own risk. Offering a humble apology? Lin Sun's black eyes were dark and cold. Yes, although this order is directed at the region Lord He Kong, but when he spoke up to hear, Ji Lung suddenly shut his mouth. He was just a little bit away from speaking the truth that he'd guessed. Lin Sun glanced at him. Do you already suspect that the region Lord He Kong was killed by me? Ji Lung stiffened all over, and just as he was about to say something, Lin Sun nodded and said, although you guessed wrong, it is not much different. Although Lin Sun's answer was a little vague, Ji Lung did not dare to think about it anymore. Instead, he said, "Senior, the wind-killing demon emperor is the first region lord of the Cold Sky territory, and he is also an elder of the divine Sunshine Ancient sect. If you offend him, it is equal to offending the divine Sunshine Ancient sect." His words were full of anxiety and worry. In this way, whether you go to apologize or not, it is not good. It is just the divine Sunshine Ancient sect. What are you afraid of? Lin Sun smiled disapprovingly. In these years, he had killed countless descendants of the divine Sunshine Ancient sect, so he did not care about this. Moreover, in the past 2 months, he had made such a big noise in the Cold Sky territory. On the one hand, he wanted to make a name for himself, and on the other hand, he wanted to fight with the divine Sunshine Ancient sect. What are you afraid of in the dark world except for the Hidden Land Realm and the Bronze Sparrow Tower, who is not afraid of the divine Sunshine Ancient sect? From today on, you will take over all the territories and forces left by the Region Lord of Haikong. Those who have been affected by the Nightmare of Fear will listen to your orders. Lin Sun made a decision. You have to remember that you can only act in the dark. Once your identity is exposed, you will be in danger. Hearing this, Ji Lung immediately guessed something. "Senior, are you planning to leave?" Lin Sun nodded. "I just want to make some preparations and be on guard in advance." 2 months had passed, and his name, Sword Demon Tao Abyss, had long been famous in the Cold Sky territory. If Ruashi came to the Dark World, she would definitely be able to find out this information easily. And this time, the conflict with the divine Sunshine Ancient sect was inevitable. In the face of the threat of wind-killing Demon Emperor, he could just leave, because the Region Lord Haikong had always been the scapegoat. Therefore, whether he went to see wind-killing Demon Emperor or not would not be affected at all. But Lin Sun did not intend to do so. He might be able to leave, but as long as wind-killing Demon Emperor carefully investigated, he would definitely find out through various clues that the mastermind behind the turmoil in the Cold Sky territory was his Sword Demon Tao Abyss. And the identity of Sword Demon Tao Abyss could not stand up to scrutiny at all. As long as he was careful, it was very likely that he would be able to speculate his true identity. After all, the whole world already knew that he, the Quasi-Emperor Zhu Shi, had the power to kill an Emperor Realm expert. And the fact that the Region Lord Haikong and the others were suppressed would also make the enemy more and more certain that Sword Demon Tao Abyss was Lin Sun. Therefore, Lin Sun decided to see wind-killing Demon Emperor. It would be best if he could also suppress him without attracting too much attention. Of course, the worst result was nothing more than his identity being exposed. For Lin Sun, it was no big deal to leave the Cold Sky territory. On this day, Lin Sun left Silver City and went alone to the place where the first Region Lord of the Cold Sky territory, wind-killing Demon Emperor, Miaoyan Mountain. Chapter 2180. Miaoyan Mountain. In a magnificent palace, Demon Emperor Feng Tu was drinking wine with the 2 region lords, Hong Yu and Xian Chong. Demon Emperor Feng Tu was talking cheerfully, but the 2 region lords, Hong Yu and Xian Chong, seemed to have lost their appetite. They were still worried that the Region Lord of Haikong would take advantage of their absence to swallow up the territory they controlled. There's no need to panic. My Divine Illumination Ancient Sect will send experts over in less than a day. At that time, it doesn't matter if Old Man Haikong apologizes or not. He won't be able to escape. The Wind Massacre Demon Monarch smiled faintly. Just as he was about to gulp down the wine in his cup, he suddenly sensed something and looked outside the hall. A figure had appeared out of nowhere. He was tall and thin, and his reflection on the ground was a huge shadow. The shadow had 8 heads the size of a house and 8 tails the size of a mountain ridge. "Ha!" The wine cup in Demon Emperor Feng Tu's hand fell to the ground, and the wine spilled, but he didn't notice it at all. His body stiffened and his eyes stared blankly. He didn't expect that the person the sect would send to support him would be this ruthless person who was famous for being cruel and bloodthirsty. Your heart is twitching. If your heart is cut out now, it will definitely taste extraordinary. Accompanied by a low, hoarse, and cold voice, the figure walked slowly into the palace. At this moment, Regent Lord Hong Yu and Regent Lord Xian Chong felt suffocated. It was as if they saw endless darkness surging over and drowning the palace. Boundless fear spread through their bodies like a cold current. A name appeared in their minds at the same time. Great Emperor Baki, the most ruthless and cruel great emperor in the dark world. In order to refine a demon weapon, he mercilessly slaughtered millions of living beings. He once entered a primordial battlefield alone and collected countless heroic souls that were left behind in it. He devoured them one by one just to cultivate a terrifying secret technique. According to legend, Great Emperor Baki's original body was a primordial variant serpent that was born from a muddy source and had 8 heads and 8 tails. Each head controlled an evil innate divine ability that they were born with. The dark world was never short of ferocious people, but they were far inferior to Great Emperor Baki. When massacred, Demon Monarch felt as if his buttocks were being pricked by needles. He stood up abruptly and bowed his head. When massacre greets, martial uncle. After so many years, you're still too timid. The figure stopped and glanced at the wind, slaying Demon Monarch. He shook his head in disappointment. Demon Monarch Wind Slaughter kept quiet out of fear, not daring to refute. You don't have to be surprised. I came out of my secluded cultivation on a whim. I heard that there's some trouble in the realm of Cold Sky, so I came to take a look. The figure casually sat down. He was dressed in a black robe with wide sleeves. His face was fair and handsome, and his eyes were like scarlet gems, suffused with a demonic and deep cold luster. Even if he was merely sitting there casually, the aura that suffused his body was still boundlessly terrifying, and it revealed the phenomenon of mountains of corpses, seas of blood, and the wailing of ghosts and gods. The Red Rain Region Lord and the Xianchong Region Lord began to tremble. Their faces were pale, and they could not sit still. In the realm of Cold Sky, they were supreme existences that countless ruthless people feared and respected, but they did not even dare to raise their heads in front of Great Emperor Baki. Demon Monarch Wind Slaughter respectfully stood to the side and said in a low voice, "Martial Uncle, with you here, even if it's a great disaster, it can be easily resolved." Great Emperor Baki responded with an expressionless face. "Wind Slaughter, you're already in the 3rd layer Martial Emperor realm, but you still don't understand that in our eyes, nothing is easy. Just like this Black Nightmare Demon Emperor, he was able to sweep through the realm of Cold Sky in 2 months. How can he be an ordinary person?" Demon Monarch Wind Slaughter's face stiffened, and he was extremely embarrassed. "Where's this person?" Great Emperor Baki asked. Demon Monarch Wind Slaughter hurriedly said, "I've already ordered him to come and beg for forgiveness within 3 days. If he's still afraid of our divine Sunlight Ancient sect, he will definitely come." Great Emperor Baki frowned, and a hint of displeasure flashed through his scarlet eyes. "If I'm the Black Nightmare Demon Emperor, I will definitely not be afraid of him, since he dares to do this. You're too stupid to think that he's afraid of the sect." Cold sweat broke out on Demon Monarch Wind Slaughter's forehead. At this moment, he even regretted asking for help from the sect. Of all people, he had to send Martial Uncle Baki. It was like a nightmare. "I'll give you the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. Gather all the information about the Black Nightmare Demon Emperor, including what he has done in the past 6 months. The more detailed, the better." Great Emperor Baki gave the order coldly. Yes, Demon Monarch Wind Slaughter immediately agreed. As a matter of fact, as the first territory lord of the Cold Sky territory, Demon Monarch Wind Slaughter knew the Black Nightmare Demon Emperor too well. In less than the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, he had already gathered all the information about the Black Nightmare Demon Emperor. Great Emperor Baki casually flipped through the information, but he did not find anything noteworthy. However, when he saw what had happened to the Black Nightmare Demon Emperor in the past 2 months, a strange look flashed across Great Emperor Baki's scarlet eyes. After a while, he raised his head and stared at Demon Monarch Wind Slaughter. Demon Monarch Wind Slaughter's hair stood on end, and he felt uncomfortable all over. "If I'm not wrong, the Sword Demon Dao Abyss is the real culprit. As for the Black Nightmare Demon Emperor, he's just a scapegoat, Great Emperor Baki said. Great Emperor Baki's words stunned Demon Emperor Windslayer, Red Rain, and Shincho. Sword Demon Dao Abyss? That's just a Jew, she quasi-emperor. How could he be the real culprit? Great Emperor Baki did not explain. He continued to read the information and said in a low voice, did the Sword Demon Dao Abyss really only appear in the Cold Sky territory in the past 2 months? Yes. Demon Monarch Wind Slaughter said without hesitation. Given this kid's courage and skill, it's impossible for no one to know about it if he was in the Cold Sky territory in the past. Great Emperor Baki suddenly laughed, and a strange divine light appeared in his scarlet pupils. No wonder I had a sudden impulse when I was breaking out of the closed-door training. It's because I'm about to reunite with that baby. At the end, there was a rare trace of emotion in his cold voice. A long time ago, he was ordered by his sect to come to the ancient desolation domain from the starry sky, ancient path. He first sealed his cultivation with a forbidden secret technique and entered the extreme, ancient domain with the identity of a quasi-emperor. Then, he sneaked into the Imperial Pass. After several twists and turns, he finally arrived at the ancient desolation domain. His goal was only to do one thing: to destroy the Great Wall of the Imperial Pass. In this way, the power of the divine, illuminating ancient sect would be able to invade the ancient desolation domain and control this world that was regarded as the origin of all Daos. This was because, according to the ancient records of the divine, illuminating ancient sect, the main battlefield of the 10-directional Dao war happened outside the Great Wall of the ancient desolation domain. Since the beginning of time, the Great Wall of the Imperial Pass had the title of the first heavenly chasm of the ancient desolation domain, the place where the Emperor realm stopped. In fact, that was the core battlefield of the 10-directional Dao war. It was also during this battle that the ancient desolation domain was shattered. The origin of the world was shattered, turning into a small world that sank to the edge of the ultimate. During the 10-directional Dao war, the Emperor realm existences of the ancient desolation domain joined forces to defend the Great Wall of the Imperial Pass against the nameless Emperor. They fought until heaven and earth were turned upside down. Even now, outside the Great Wall of the Imperial Pass, there are still the remnant souls of countless fallen ancient emperors, as well as pieces of world fragments. At that time, the divine illuminating ancient sect and the hidden land realm were forces under the nameless emperor. They also participated in this battle, but they suffered heavy casualties. In the end, after the 10-directional Dao war ended, the forbidden power of order controlled by the nameless emperor turned into 3 great disasters that covered the sky above the ancient desolation domain. However, the Great Wall of the Imperial Pass was not destroyed. It still stood tall on the frontline battlefield, as if it would never die. Therefore, for the divine, illuminating ancient sect, only by destroying the Great Wall of the Imperial Pass could they truly control the ancient desolation domain and control this place of origin that was sealed by the Forbidden Order. That was why Ba Qi came back then. However, his cultivation was sealed, and he only had the power of the quasi-emperor realm. It was impossible for him to do this. Helpless, he had no choice but to go into hiding. For this, he even took over the body of an elder of the Heavenly Sword sect in the ancient desolation domain named Fan Qi and took over his body. For Ba Qi, although his cultivation was sealed, he still had wisdom and inheritance. As long as he was carefully trained, he would definitely be able to cultivate a leader who could lead the ancient desolation domain. As long as he controlled this person, it was equivalent to controlling a chess piece that could overturn the ancient desolation domain in the future. Yin Qingbai was the successor he had chosen. In fact, Yin Qingbai did not disappoint him. In just a few decades, he showed an incomparably dazzling light and was regarded as the #1 person in the ancient desolation domain at the same level. But later, he accidentally heard that at the edge of the ultimate, a place regarded as the lower world, a baby boy with the talent of devouring the abyss was born devouring the abyss. Perhaps only the divine, illuminating ancient sect in the hidden land realm, who had followed the orders of the previous nameless emperor, knew that this kind of talent did not belong to the ancient path of the starry sky at all. Then, Ba Qi took Yin Qingbai with him to the lower world without hesitation. However, he did not expect that the previous nameless emperor's willpower had already arrived one step ahead of him with the help of the Forbidden Order power. It was also at that time that Ba Qi learned that the previous nameless emperor, who had crossed the starry sky since the Archean Age, had only come to capture a woman named Luo Qingxuan. And the baby boy with the talent of devouring the abyss was the child of Luo Qingxuan. Later, the Forbidden Order power appeared and covered the sky above the Xiao Empire. Ba Qi took action and deprived the baby boy of his spiritual meridian. To this day, Great Emperor Baki could still clearly remember the heart-wrenching cries of the infant lying in the swaddling clothes. Bright red blood gushed out from his chest that had been cut open. The only thing that made Great Emperor Ba Qi regret was that after he deprived the baby boy of his spiritual meridian, before he had time to do anything else, an unexpected accident happened. The fourth chapter was delivered. The Great Wall of the Imperial Pass, which had stopped the Emperor realm from advancing since ancient times, the 10 great Taoist wars that had broken out, and what Ba Qi had done in the past, were all partly revealed in this chapter. So, let's not talk about goldfish water anymore. In addition, there was no more for tonight. In order to speed up the plot, the outline of the next chapter had to be redesigned. Chapter 2181. Back then, that accident happened too suddenly. Emperor Baki still had a lingering fear when he thought of it. The atmosphere in the hall was depressing. Looking at Emperor Baki, who seemed to be lost in thought, Wind Slaughter Demon Emperor, Red Rain Region Lord, and Xianchong Region Lord were all shocked. Seeing that the atmosphere was getting more and more oppressive, Wind Massacre Demon Monarch could not help but ask, "Martial Uncle, the baby you mentioned, could it be the sword demon Dao Abyss?" His words woke Emperor Baki up from his reminiscence. He nodded and said, "Yes, if I'm right, this boy should be called Lin's son." Lin's son? It was the successor of Mountain Heart. Wind Slaughter, Demon Emperor, and others couldn't believe it. How could it be him? I see. It is said that Lin's son once killed ice-devouring Sword Emperor and other emperors in the Hongmeng world with his trump card, which made the whole starry sky ancient path in an uproar. Red Rain Region Lord was the first to react. Only a person like him can help He Kong to swallow up the territories of Xuanning, Huanghe, and Mingyu. Right, the sword demon Dao Abyss only appeared out of nowhere 2 months ago, and it's absolutely impossible for old man He Kong to accomplish this by relying on his own strength. In this way, this kid might really be Lin's son. Wind Slaughter Sword Emperor was suddenly excited. He never thought that the target that was chased by the whole dark world was right under his nose. "You're not too stupid." Emperor Baki's voice was indifferent. From now on, He Kong is no longer important. The most important thing is to find out the whereabouts of Lin's son, who incarnated as Sword Demon Tao Abyss. "Uncle, don't worry. I'll mobilize all the forces to search for this boy." Wind Slaughter Sword Emperor took a deep breath and said with a murderous look, "No matter what, we must not let him escape from the cold sky territory this time." Red Rain Region Lord and Xianchong were also in high spirits. Only Emperor Baki frowned and said, as if he was looking at an idiot, "This boy has the means to kill emperors. What's the use of mobilizing more forces?" Wind Slaughter Demon Emperor's expression stagnated, and he felt a little embarrassed. In fact, he also felt a little scared. In fact, Lin Sun's identity as Quasi-Emperor Zhu, she was too easy to be despised and ignored. Especially for an emperor like him, he would never put anyone under the emperor realm in his eyes. But obviously, Lin Sun was different. Not to mention the past. Just in the last 2 months, 6 region lords, Xuanning, Huanghe, Mingyu, Lin Feng, Fei Ye, and Hui Shuang, had been successively suppressed. This was obviously not something that the old man He Kong could do alone. Wind Massacre Demon Emperor even suspected that the old man He Kong had been suppressed a long time ago. Under such circumstances, it was no different from courting death for ordinary emperors to kill Lin Sun. Regent Lord Hong Yu and Regent Lord Xiancheng were obviously aware of this. Their expressions changed, and they felt a chill in their hearts. If Emperor Baki didn't come this time, who else in the Cold Sky territory could be the enemy of Sword Devil Tao Abyss? No, Lin Sun, the successor of Mount Heart. Martial Uncle, what do you think we should do? At this moment, the Wind Massacre Demon Emperor appeared incomparably humble as he humbly asked for guidance. This man walks in the dark world with the identity of Sword Devil Tao Abyss. Obviously, he is afraid that his identity will be exposed and he will be wanted by the whole world. Great Emperor Baki's eyes darkened, and a strange light flashed in his scarlet eyes. But he has turned the Cold Sky region upside down. He knows that the Divine Illumination Ancient Sect will not stand by and do nothing, but he still dares to do this. Tell me, why is he doing this? The Wind Massacre Demon Emperor and the others looked at each other and shook their heads. Great Emperor Baki said, I don't know either, but I'm sure that he won't give up until he achieves his goal after spending so much effort. This means that he won't leave the domain of Cold Sky in a short period of time. Speaking of this, he looked at the Wind Massacre Demon Emperor and said, Didn't you order He Kong to come and beg for forgiveness within 3 days? The Wind Massacre Demon Emperor nodded repeatedly. It's Lin Sun's call whether He Kong will come or not, and he will definitely realize that our Divine Sunshine Ancient Sect will take some action after this incident. Emperor Baki said in a low voice, but he won't give up what he has done. Under such circumstances, how will he get out of this situation? The Wind Massacre Demon Emperor said in a daze, He won't really come to beg for forgiveness, will he? Emperor Baki said, You guessed right. The Wind Massacre Demon Emperor was stunned. He just said it casually, and he didn't believe it himself. Unexpectedly, it seemed that his guess was right. Emperor Baki said, But he definitely won't come to beg for forgiveness, but to solve the problem in front of him. So, we just have to wait here. In the end, his voice became very certain. If Lin Sun was here, he would definitely be amazed by the meticulous analysis of Emperor Baki, who was almost right about the truth. This kind of mentality was undoubtedly very frightening. Just you wait. I want to see this kid as well. He should have died, but after losing his innate talent, he has miraculously lived until now. Moreover, he has done numerous great things that have shaken the starry sky in recent years. It's simply a miracle. Emperor Baki looked out of the hall with a hint of emotion on his face. He suddenly thought of Yun Qingbai. If Yun Qingbai hadn't died in the hands of Lin Sun in the absolute domain, he would also have such a foundation that could shock the starry sky. Such a chess piece that was born with a sword bone and refined the spiritual vein of the devouring abyss was destroyed just like that. What a pity. One day later, Lin Sun saw the Miaoyan mountain from afar. Is it possible? He patted the bronze sword case on his back. It's still not enough. I can only maintain it for less than a quarter of an hour. Ye's calm voice sounded from the bronze sword case. It's more than enough to deal with the old guy from the Divine Sunshine Ancient Sect. Lin Sun smiled, stepped into the void, and swept towards the Miaoyan mountain in the distance. To his surprise, there was no defensive force on the Miaoyan mountain, and he couldn't even see the figures of some strong men. Could it be that the wind-slaying Sword Emperor had already guessed that I would come and was worried that the strong men under his command would be affected when the battle broke out, so he ordered them to retreat early? As Lin Sun was thinking, he suddenly noticed that a terrifying and cold willpower rushed out of the Miaoyan mountain and swept across the sky. In an instant, Lin Sun's pupil shrank, and he stopped moving forward. A dignified expression appeared on his face. Lin Sun, we meet again after many years. An indifferent, hoarse voice sounded with a hint of emotion. With the voice, Emperor Baki, who was dressed in a black robe with wide sleeves, with a handsome face and scarlet eyes like gems, appeared out of thin air and stood on the Miaoyan mountain. Lin Sun suddenly raised his head and stared at the figure with his deep black eyes. He realized that he had underestimated the power of the Divine Sunshine Ancient Sect after all. Obviously, the opponent had seen through his identity. No wonder there's no one here. It turns out that you've been waiting for me for a long time. But who are you? Lin Sun's state of mind recovered in an instant, and he looked calm. Emperor Baki laughed, like an evil god standing under the sky. He said leisurely, "Don't you remember me? It was I who took out your spiritual vein and gave it to Yun Qingbai." Boom! As if being struck by lightning, Lin Sun, who was as tough as a rock, couldn't help shaking at this moment, and his face became cold. The killing intent and hatred accumulated in his heart for many years boiled like a raging river and sea, and he was about to lose control. Bachi, the culprit behind the Lin family's murder. Earlier, Lin Sun was still thinking about how to go to the Shengzhou ancient sect to meet his enemy, whom he had never met. Unexpectedly, Bachi appeared in front of the Miaoyun mountain today. This really surprised Lin Sun. Emperor Baki sighed with emotion. "Speaking of which, I'm just as surprised as you are. But it seems that we're destined to meet here." This time, he came to the Cold Sky territory on a whim to solve the turmoil caused by the region Lord Heikong. But who would have thought that he would accidentally find the baby from back then? Therefore, seeing Lin Sun, who was silent at this moment, Emperor Baki understood Lin Sun's feelings very well. It was such a coincidence. Isn't it better? Taking a deep breath, Lin Sun was full of fighting intent. The long-suppressed killing intent and hatred surged all over his body like a landslide and a tsunami. He had endured for many years. At this moment, he didn't want to endure it anymore. He just needed to vent it out. From childhood to the present, his cultivation had been shrouded in the shadow of the Lin family's tragedy. His parents were missing. Master Lu's life was uncertain, and even his spiritual vein was ruthlessly deprived. Over the years, indescribable doubts, anger, and hatred were buried deep in his heart, reminding Lin Sun all the time that the culprit of these hatred was doomed to be unable to be eliminated as long as he was alive. For this reason, he went to the ancient Desolation Realm, experienced dangers and tribulations, and finally killed Yun Qingbai in the Absolute Summit Domain. But in the end, he knew that the culprit behind the scenes was someone else, and Yun Qingbai was just a tragic figure who couldn't control his own fate later. He learned from the jade slips left by the old priest and the old priest that the culprit behind the scenes was from the Divine Sunshine Ancient Sect and the various conspiracies and truths behind the Lin family's murder that year. Without the help of the forbidden power of order, the Lin family's murder wouldn't have happened so easily in the mortal world. But all this couldn't change the fact that Bachi was the culprit. "I've been waiting for you for a long time," a cold voice full of hatred sounded. Lin Sun stood in the air with his clothes fluttering in the wind, and his black hair flying in the air. The horrible killing intent pierced through the world, making the mountains and rivers tremble and wail. He hated Bachi to the extreme today. For the first time since he started his cultivation, Lin Sun no longer controlled his inner hatred and let the anger and fire boil and roar all over his body. Reason and calmness were replaced by unprecedented killing intent. Today, no matter what price he had to pay, he would kill the culprit behind the scenes. P.S. Bachi had 8 heads and 8 tails, and his original form was Yamada no Orochi in Japanese mythology. Coincidentally, today was the Martyrs' Memorial Day. Chapter 2182. In the main hall of Miaoyun Mountain, Wen massacred Demon Emperor, Red Rain Region Lord, and Xianchong Region Lord stood side by side. When they saw the monstrous killing intent exuding from Lin Sun, they were shocked and could not believe that this was the power of a Jushi quasi-emperor. And seeing the changes in the killing intent and power around Lin Sun, Bachi could not help but flash a strange light in the depths of his eyes. He had to admit that this baby who should have died back then was indeed the most outstanding genius in the world today. There was probably no one who could be on par with him in the entire ancient road of the starry sky. This made Bachi more and more curious. How did Lin Sun, who had lost the spiritual vein, change his fate and achieve what he had today, like nirvana? Boom! The world shook as Lin Sun stepped into the void. The boiling killing intent caused the surrounding heaven and earth to fall into chaos, and there was endless divine brilliance circulating around his body. "Do you want to do it now? Don't you want to know what happened back then?" Bachi suddenly asked. I'll kill you and extract your memories. I'll get the answer myself. Lin Sun took a deep breath and said coldly, Yezi. In the bronze sword box, Yezi turned into a ray of bright light and appeared. Yezi could clearly feel that Lin Sun had become a different person this time, showing a kind of extreme hatred and killing intent. This had never happened before. Yezi did not ask or tell Lin Sun that the man standing in the void had unfathomable cultivation and was suspected to be at the 7th level of the Emperor realm. Or rather, Yezi had long realized that even if he told the cruel truth to Lin Sun, the other party would not retreat. Therefore, Yezi did not say a word and attacked immediately. Swish! A ray of sword chi soared into the sky, shining like a divine rainbow, shaking the stars. The incomparably abundant sword intent seemed to be able to destroy this world. This was Yezi's full strength. With this sword, he had easily suppressed Ling Feng, Mingyu, Song Lang, and Fei Ye. This is the sword spirit that once aroused the greed of the ice-devouring sword emperor. It really is extraordinary. Ba Qi's scarlet pupils were flowing with a strange light, and his voice was low. As he spoke, a scarlet law of emperor emerged in front of him and evolved into a huge, ferocious snake head. It soared into the sky and opened its mouth to devour. Rumble. The peerlessly ferocious and fierce strand of sword chi was like a piece of paper that was devoured by the enormous snake head and vanished completely. Ba Qi seemed as if he'd done something that couldn't be any more casual, and he said, Unfortunately, it's still insufficient to fight me. Ye's pupils contracted. Lin Sun clenched his fists quietly, hatred surging in his black eyes. Anger raged in his body like burning, but it did not destroy his reason. This strike alone made him realize how childish and laughable his previous understanding of Ba Qi was. How could a quasi-emperor compare to him? On Subtle Cloud Mountain, Windfall Devil Emperor and the others felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. Earlier, when Yi attacked, it caused them to break out in cold sweat because the might of that sword chi caused their hairs to stand on end, and they felt extremely threatened. Fortunately, in front of Great Emperor Baki, this sword could not withstand a single blow. I'll give you a chance to use all your life-saving means. Otherwise, if you wait for me to attack, I'm afraid you won't have a chance to use them again. Ba Qi's voice resounded between heaven and earth. He seemed extremely conceited, and his expression had been cold and indifferent, like a superior god. Roar! In front of him, the huge snake head roared, and the nearby mountains and rivers exploded and collapsed. The terrifying power of the law of Emperor Realm turned into a boundless blood-red torrent that swept towards Lin Sun. Yi attacked, slashing out thousands of strands of sword chi, densely tearing the void and sweeping across. Rumble. The sky and earth collapsed, and the sun and moon lost their light. The boundless sword chi collided with the blood-red torrent, and the resulting power was so terrible that it seemed to destroy the whole world. When the smoke and dust dispersed, Ye's figure became dim. The gap was too big. If he was at his peak, he would not be afraid of a person who was suspected to be at the 7th level of the Emperor Realm. Unfortunately, he could only kill an opponent at the 4th level of the Emperor Realm at most. But he didn't show any fear. His figure appeared in the air. Although he was only 3 inches tall, he had the power to defend against 10,000 enemies. This time, Lin Sun was not afraid of death, and he would fight to the end. Why should he be afraid? The sword spirit was never afraid of death. The sword spirit can't hold on any longer. Since you can escape from the primordial world to the dark world, you can't only have these life-saving means, right? Ba Qi spoke again. He had been standing on the top of Miaoyan Mountain, as if he was unshakable under the sky. This was the power of the Hand of Darkness. In the dark world, even those in the Emperor Realm would turn pale when they talked about it. So much nonsense only proves that you have concerns and scruples in your heart. Lin Sun's black eyes were cold, and his killing intent surged like a tide. Otherwise, why don't you dare to attack with all your strength? Ba Qi was silent for a moment, and then he nodded and said, That's right. No matter if it's you or the sword spirit, Both of you are nothing to me. The only thing I'm afraid of is none other than the life-saving means you possess. It's better to be safe than sorry. I don't want to fail miserably." Immediately, he changed the subject, and his eyes were frightening. "However, no matter what happens, you can't change your fate today." His words were indifferent and unquestionable. He had absolute and supreme power and was as proud as a god. But from the beginning to the end, he was neither arrogant nor careless. He was calm and cold. The more he was like this, the more chilling and desperate it was. Seeing such a scene, Windslaughter Sword Emperor and others felt a burst of fear and depression. They couldn't imagine what a terrible and powerless thing it would be to be the enemy of Emperor Ba Qi. Lin Sun didn't seem to be affected at all. Facing Ba Qi's confident attitude, he spat out only one word: kill. Then Yi moved again. His figure was bright, as if it was burning, and he rushed to Ba Qi. Ba Qi frowned. For him, this kind of attack was like an ant trying to shake a tree. He didn't believe that Lin Sun didn't know this. But both Lin Sun and the Sword Spirit seemed to be so resolute that they would rather be smashed to pieces than fight with their lives on the line. Were they really courting death? Ba Qi didn't believe it. Therefore, in the face of Yi, Ba Qi used his real strength. He stretched out a hand from the void and gently clenched it. Boom! The void suddenly collapsed and broke. The scarlet law of Emperor, like thick divine chains, intertwined and turned into a bloody prison. The prison reflected horrible visions such as demons dancing wildly, gods falling, and the sky falling and the earth sinking. The forbidden blood prison. It was a supreme secret method that operated the law of space and one's own cultivation to the extreme. However, a strange scene appeared. Before the forbidden blood prison showed its power, it suddenly stagnated for a moment. In fact, at this moment, the whole world seemed to be still, and the supreme power of time seemed to be interfered with for a moment. Even though Ba Qi had made sufficient preparations and noticed that something was off, he was still unable to react in time to the sudden change that occurred in that instant. At this moment, a suet jade bottle appeared in Ye's hand. An array of sword qi came out of the crystal clear mouth of the bottle. The Great Way bottle, and the sword that came out of the bottle was Ye's all-out attack. In a flash, it was extremely short. By the time Ba Qi reacted, he saw that the sword qi had already arrived before him. It was so close that it was already too late for him to dodge. The sword qi roared at an incredible speed. The endless fierce sharpness tore apart Ba Qi's defense, broke his armor, and split his chest. Puff! Blood splashed. Like a supreme god, Emperor Ba Qi groaned in pain at this moment. His face suddenly changed, and anger flashed in his scarlet and indifferent eyes. That strike had almost split open his stomach. Although he resisted it in the end, his skin and flesh were torn, his bones were exposed, and his blood kept pouring out. The fierce sword qi invaded his body and kept raging, causing him internal injuries. It was incredible. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. Ba Qi couldn't help but suspect that if he hadn't been strong enough, this sword would have killed him. The more he thought about it, the more afraid he was and the angrier he was. He had been vigilant enough and calculated everything, but he still suffered a big loss in a flash. Boom! At this moment, the forbidden blood prison that he had used earlier finally dissipated along with his injuries. One could imagine how fast the battle that had occurred in that instant was. In the distance, Lin Sun's pupil shrank and his face changed slightly. This was the first time that he failed to kill his opponent after casting the forbidden death since he started his cultivation, and he even used the power of the infinite bottle and Yi. All of this seemed to be silently proving how terrifying an Emperor Realm existence like Ba Qi was, and he wasn't someone an ordinary Emperor Realm figure could compare to. Demon Monarch Windslayer and the others were dumbfounded. The sudden attack was so unbelievable that they couldn't believe their eyes. They couldn't imagine how someone as powerful as Great Emperor Baki could suddenly suffer such a heavy injury. This strange scene also made their hair stand on end. If they were in Ba Qi's position, they would have died in a flash, wouldn't they? Swish! Seeing that his sword did not kill Quasi-Emperor Ba Qi, Yi rushed forward without hesitation and launched another attack, intending to kill him in one go. "Get out of my way!" Ba Qi bellowed. The bloody aura around him roared and swept across the 9 heavens and 10 earths. Terrifying power spread out and instantly shook Yi back. Bang! Yi flew backward, his figure staggered and dimmed. Obviously, he couldn't hold on any longer. He panted and said to Lin Sun, "Lin Sun, this old thing is at the 8th level of Emperor Realm." The 8th level of Emperor Realm. Just this realm alone was enough to make anyone feel despair and collapse. The difference was more than thousands of miles. Lin Sun's black eyes flickered. Now that she was gone and Yi was injured, the forbidden death could only injure him, but not kill him. This could be said to be the biggest crisis Lin Sun had encountered since he started cultivating. Chapter 2183. However, Lin Sun did not flinch. His black eyes were fixed on Ba Qi in the distance, and there was a crazy determination in his eyes. "Ye go back to the sword sheath first," Lin Sun said softly, but Yi shook his head and refused. He was also very determined. Sword spirit, how could he flinch? Death was not something to be afraid of. Lin Sun was startled, and then he couldn't help laughing. "Fine, we brothers will fight to the death with this old beast today." Brothers? This title seemed to have an indescribable power in such a dangerous situation, and he couldn't help laughing. He smiled brightly. He was really happy. It turned out that Lin Sun regarded him as a brother. In the distance, looking at Lin Sun and Yi who were at the end of their rope, Ba Qi also laughed. His face was full of disdain, coldness, and killing intent. He had already recovered from the serious injuries he suffered before, but his internal injuries couldn't be healed in a short time. But it didn't matter. Even if he was seriously injured and on the verge of death, he had absolute confidence to kill these 2 ignorant ants. "Little fellow, back then, I took away your origin spirit vein and gave it to Yun Qingbai. Today, I will take away your soul and flesh and refine you into a puppet. You will live a life worse than death for all eternity." With a cold and hoarse voice, Ba Qi attacked without hesitation. A blood-red light wheel appeared behind him, reflecting the figure of a huge, fierce beast. 8 huge heads were raised and roared, shattering the void. The 8 tails shook and stirred up the world. Mystic Cloud Mountain, which was covered in layers of restrictive formations, directly turned into dust that filled the sky. The horrified Wind Slaughter Demon Emperor and the others immediately dodged in a sorry state. Even so, they felt extremely terrified and almost suffocated. The furious great Emperor Ba Qi was like a peerless evil god who walked out a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood, shrouding the world in great terror. Boom! Ba Qi waved his sleeve, and a snake tail as thick as a mountain swept out. It was like a divine whip in the hand of a deity, crushing the void and whipping the yin and yang. An 8th-level Emperor Realm cultivator's aura alone was enough to crush mountains and rivers. The attack from the snake's tail was even more terrifying. Lin Sun didn't dodge, because it was impossible. He did not dodge either. He was well aware that Lin Sun, who was only at the 3rd heaven of Quasi-Emperor Zhu Shi, would not be able to block this attack. Even the pressure released by this attack could kill him. Therefore, he could not retreat. His bearing was calm and resolute. Incomparably crazy sword chi accumulated on his body, as if it was burning him. But what was even faster than Ye's attack was an extremely dazzling divine arrow. It seemed as if it had penetrated through the ages, and it emitted an extremely ferocious aura. Even the heavens and earth darkened under this arrow. Yi was startled, and then his eyes lit up. It was that guy. Before he arrived at the world of darkness, this was the same arrow that pierced through the vast starry sky and killed a 4th-level Emperor Realm expert with ease. That scene was incomparably stunning. However, in comparison, the arrow that shot through the air was even more ferocious. At the same time, the heavens and earth froze for a moment. Time stopped, and all things returned to silence. The whipping snake tail seemed to be frozen in a painting. Only the arrow pierced through the picturesque world and whizzed away. Boom! In the distance, the body of great Emperor Baki, who had an immeasurable aura, exploded instantly. Blood rained down, and the heavens and earth were dyed red. An earth-shattering rumble shattered the world that seemed to have been frozen in time. It was also at this time that Demon Emperor Windslaughter and the others saw great Emperor Baki explode with a single arrow. Their eyes almost popped out of their sockets, and they cried out involuntarily. How is this possible? Their minds were blank, and their minds were blank. Just a moment ago, great Emperor Baki's stomach had almost been ripped open, and he had sustained serious injuries. This was something that Demon Emperor Windslaughter and the others found hard to understand. Now, great Emperor Baki had been killed by a single arrow in the blink of an eye. The bloody and unbelievable scene almost drove them crazy. Great Emperor Baki was an 8th-level Emperor Realm expert, the hand of darkness feared by countless beings. How powerful and terrifying was he? How could he just die like this? Ye's eyes drifted and looked at Wu Kei beside Lin's son, who looked like a gray-haired teenager. He was standing in the void with the insignificant bow in his hand, and his aura was fierce and aggressive. However, Yi was keenly aware that Wu Kei had suffered a great loss from this arrow. His face was so pale that it was almost transparent. When Yi saw Lin Sun's appearance, he was even more surprised. At this moment, Lin Sun's black hair had already turned into the color of frost and snow. He seemed to have aged countless years all of a sudden. His aura was weak and his eyes were dim. Lin Sun, Ye's heart trembled. I'm all right, Lin Sun said in a hoarse voice. Using the forbidden passing twice in a row made his cultivation completely exhausted, and he suffered a certain degree of backfire. He's not dead yet. Suddenly, Wu Kei's face turned pale. Lin Sun and Yi were stunned by his words. They looked up at the sky. In the distant sky, surging bloody mist silently suffused and roiled, and it was ceaselessly gathering and wriggling as if it possessed a life of its own. In the end, it turned into a huge and boundless beast. Its body was as big as a mountain, covered with scarlet and cold scales. It had 8 heads, and each head was as big as a house. Some were fierce, some were evil, and some were greedy, violent, furious, bloodthirsty, and insane, so on and so forth. On the other hand, 8 snake tails rose up behind its body, and they were like numerous thick divine whips that reached the heavens. As they danced about, the color of blood suffused the air and caused the surrounding space to collapse and sink. This was the body of great Emperor Baki. Boom! The world was turbulent, and the blood spread like a tide. Great Emperor Baki, who had turned into a beast body, roared under the sky. The land within a radius of 10,000 miles was in turmoil. The sky collapsed, and the boundless turbulence and killing intent made the sun and moon dim and the world turn upside down. That scene was really terrible. Demon Emperor Windslaughter and the others trembled. They were surprised and frightened. They were surprised that great Emperor Baki was not dead, and they were frightened because the aura that great Emperor Baki exuded made them shiver in fear. Lin Sun, Yi, and Wu Kei looked solemn, and their hearts sank. Even they could not imagine how great Emperor Baki could be so terrifying. Most importantly, the 3 of them were on the verge of death. Little bastard, what other trump cards do you have? Why don't you show them all? Great Emperor Baki's 8 heads in the distance spoke at the same time. His voice shook the universe and revealed boundless cold, killing intent. He was indeed completely furious. He could not believe that he had been seriously injured twice in a row with his cultivation at the 8th level of the Emperor Realm. It was a great humiliation to him. If I had the strength of the past, how could I be looked down upon by such an ugly insect? Wu Kei sighed. You look calm. If I had the strength of the past, why would I need you to deal with such an insect? It's useless to talk about this now. Wu Kei shrugged and said, Then we can only fight to the death. Do you want to join hands with me and fight for a way out for the little master? Yi said without hesitation, Although I don't like your arrogance, I can agree to your request this time. Wu Kei could not help but grin. But at this moment, Lin Sun said, If you want to fight to the death, you should do it together. Later, you will fight together, and I will fight for a moment for you." His words were calm, but his black eyes flashed with crazy and determined hatred. This time, he would fight to the death, even if he had to fight with all his strength. Wu Kei and Ye's faces suddenly changed. Lin Sun's hair was as white as snow, and his aura was weak. If he fought with all his strength, his foundation of Tao would suffer irreparable damage. A moment of opportunity? In the distance, Great Emperor Baki shook his 8 huge heads, and his aura was terrifying. Is this the talent of your new life? He was undoubtedly the one who knew Lin Sun's talent best. The horror of the great abyss devouring sky was vividly reflected in Yun Qingbai. Hearing Lin Sun's words, Great Emperor Baki vaguely guessed something, but he was not sure. Because the truth was related to the mystery of time, which was so incredible that he did not believe that such power would appear in a quasi-emperor. However, he already had a plan. After suppressing Lin Sun, he would cut open Lin Sun's body to see what kind of amazing secret was hidden in Lin Sun's new talent. Let's do it. Ignoring Great Emperor Baki, Lin Sun took a deep breath and made an unquestionable decision. Wu Kei and he looked at each other and no longer tried to persuade him. Boom! In the distance, Great Emperor Baki took action in advance. His huge body pressed the void, and he pounced on Lin Sun at an incredible speed. You can't do it more than 3 times. Do you really think you can beat me with the same trick? Go to hell. This time, Great Emperor Baki had obviously learned his lesson. When he took action, he exhausted all his means and released thousands of Taoism in an instant. Every single Tao art was boundlessly ferocious and possessed different might, and they were dense like a violent storm that covered the heavens and the earth as they swept out. The whole world was shrouded by them. In this way, even if he was passive for a moment, it was enough to make him invincible. At the same time, Lin Sun, Yi, and Wu Kei were about to take action. But at this moment, an extremely indifferent voice sounded. "It's just a reptile. Why do you need to risk your life?" When the voice sounded, it was as sharp as a blade stabbing into their hearts. Lin Sun, Wu Kei, and Yi all stiffened. In Lin Sun's mind, a figure emerged uncontrollably. In the suffocating, boundless darkness, a figure was sitting with thumb-thick chains wrapped around his throat, feet, and back. Obscure fluctuations of order were flowing out. When he opened his eyes, they were like a pair of burning suns, tearing the boundless darkness apart. They were like extremely sharp swords that could tear the 9th heaven apart. It was him, the spirit of the broken blade. Third update. Chapter 2184. Clang. As soon as the figure of the spirit of the broken blade flashed in Lin Sun's mind, the broken blade swept out from his body with a clear sound. That clear cry traversed the heavens and the earth, causing the surroundings to tremble. Demon Emperor Windkilling, Region Lord Hongyu, and Region Lord Xiancheng trembled all over, with blood dripping from their 7 apertures. Their chi almost collapsed because of the terrible impact. They were horrified and scared out of their wits. How could the power of a clear sound be so horrible? As the broken blade swept out, it was like a galaxy sweeping out from the earth, shining above the sky. Unparalleled, murderous spirit spread like a landslide and a tsunami. Boom! The thick blood color that enveloped the world directly collapsed and disappeared like a whirlwind. Only the incomparably bright sharpness turned into the most dazzling light between heaven and earth. Under the attack of the broken blade, the thousands of Taoism skills displayed by Great Emperor Baki were crushed as if they were swept by a storm, rumbling and exploding, and a rain of light swirled in the air. It should be noted that this was the power of the 8th level of the Emperor realm. Each kind of Taoism skill was branded with the supreme secret, which had the power to conquer the world and cleanse the world. But at this moment, it was destroyed in a twinkling. Great Emperor Baki, who thought that he had won the battle, had no time to dodge. His head, which was as large as a house, was chopped off. Clatter blood splashed like a torrent, scarlet and hot. Great Emperor Baki was in great pain, and the other 7 heads let out heart-wrenching roars. The origin of the Great Way was stored in these 8 heads. Now, that one of them was chopped off, it was equivalent to cutting off a part of his cultivation. "Ow!" he roared, and his huge body emitted a violent and ferocious bloody light. "What treasure is this? How can it be so terrible?" His voice was full of fear. When he was injured by Ye's sword and pierced by Wu Kei's arrow, he was not as flustered as he was now, nor was he as calm and composed as before. Lin Sun, Wu Kei, and he looked at each other with indescribable shock in their hearts. Earlier, they'd already made up their minds to put their lives on the line. But the appearance of the broken blade swept away their declining momentum. It was like a hurricane that swept through the heavens and the earth, and it swept away everything in its path. This was undoubtedly incredible. "So that guy is actually so powerful," Wu Kei muttered. He often competed with Duan Run to refine the Emperor weapon's essence, so of course he knew about the existence of the Broken Blade Spirit. However, he did not expect the Broken Blade Spirit to be this powerful. "Lin Sun, why didn't you mention him before, or even ask him for help just now?" Yezi couldn't help asking. Lin Sun couldn't help smiling wryly. The Broken Blade Spirit could be said to be one of the most mysterious existences in the world. Ever since he was young, the Broken Blade Spirit had followed him into battle. But it was not until he was in the Hongmeng world that he knew there was such a terrifying existence lurking in the Broken Blade. To this day, Lin Sun still remembered the words of the extremely indifferent and calm figure sitting in the darkness. "You want to completely refine my power? With your current strength, you're far from being able to do it. Try again in the future." There was a tinge of disappointment in his voice. At that time, Lin Sun almost suffocated at the sight of such a scene and was soaked in cold sweat. However, the Broken Blade Spirit hadn't shown up in the past few years, so Lin Sun didn't expect it to help him at all. Therefore, Lin Sun did not expect the Broken Blade Spirit to make a move at this moment. Swoosh! The Broken Blade Spirit did not speak, or rather, he did not want to talk to a bug. Only the Broken Blade Spirit flickered in the void, as if it was controlled by an invisible hand. It set off a monstrous sharpness, as if it was about to split heaven and earth and divide the pure from the turbid. It was extremely fierce and domineering. Great Emperor Baki tried his best to dodge and resist, but with a flash of the Broken Blade Spirit, another head was chopped off. The head, which was as big as a house, fell to the ground and created a huge pit. Great Emperor Baki let out a shrill cry of pain. Blood spurted from his body, making him look hideous. He was completely terrified. With his combat strength, he would even dare to fight a 9th-level Emperor Realm Cultivator. But under the attack of the Broken Blade Spirit, he did not even have the strength to struggle. Demon Emperor Windkill and the others were dumbfounded. It was just a Broken Blade Spirit, but it had the power to crush Great Emperor Baki. If they had not seen it with their own eyes, they would not have believed it to be true. The appearance of Yezi and Wu Kei was already unbelievable, but in comparison, the Broken Blade Spirit was obviously more terrifying. Yezi and Wu Kei were also stunned. They were very docile in front of Lin Sun, but they were extremely arrogant when facing enemies. Wu Kei was fierce, arrogant, and unreasonable, while Yezi was fierce, and proud. But at this moment, witnessing the power of the Broken Blade Spirit made them feel a little uncomfortable. It felt as if the limelight had been stolen by someone else. Boom! Terrifying blood light circulated and the void shook. Completely terrified, Baki chose to escape. He did not dare to hesitate at all, and almost desperately tried to teleport through the void. The Broken Blade Spirit flashed, and endless silver divine radiance flowed like stars, covering the heaven and earth in all directions. Then, Great Emperor Baki's huge body seemed to have hit a natural moat. With a bang, he fell from the teleportation, and the void there exploded and collapsed. It was also at this moment that the Broken Blade Spirit's voice sounded in the battlefield for the first time. "It took me a long time to awaken and recover some of my vitality, but I have to waste it on a little bug like you. If I let you escape, Who will compensate me? His voice was sharp and indifferent like a sharp blade that pierced through the sky, and it carried a hint of dissatisfaction. Puff! The broken blade spirit flashed, and Great Emperor Baki's third head was chopped off. The pain made his huge body roll in the air, and his 8 mountain-like tails twitched. So, he also knows how to complain? Wu Kei was stunned. Yi said seriously, "It seems that he is very unhappy with this attack, and he is venting his anger on this bug. Who are you? How dare you choose to go against the divine, sunshine, ancient sect?" Great Emperor Baki roared in anger and fear. Threatened? Ha! How many years has it been since I was threatened by a little bug born in the source of turbidity? The broken blade spirit seemed to be even more unhappy. Whoosh! The broken blade spirit flashed, and in a flash, it chopped off Great Emperor Baki's head one after another, and blood poured down like a torrential rain. The world was filled with Great Emperor Baki's painful screams, and it was so shrill that it was horrifying. Lin Sun, Yi, and Wu Kei could not help but gasp. The scene of an 8th-level emperor being trampled and suppressed by the broken blade spirit was too shocking. As for Wen Massacre Demon Emperor and the others, they had long lost their wits, and their minds were blank. The scene in front of them had completely overturned their imagination and understanding. "Senior, please spare my life. I am willing to do everything I can to make it up to you." Great Emperor Baki could not take it anymore, and he spoke in a hoarse voice. Even with his status and power, it had been many years since he was in such a miserable state, and he had never lowered his head or begged for mercy. But now he can no longer care about his dignity. "Make it up to you? Do you think you are worthy?" The broken blade spirit was extremely overbearing, and his tone was filled with disdain. Even compensation depends on whether the other party is worthy or not. He is much more arrogant than you. He said as he glanced at Wu Kei's lips twitched. Seeing that Great Emperor Baki was only left with his head, Lin Sun could not help but say, "Senior, please spare his life." Baki was the culprit behind the Lin family's murder case, and he knew a lot of the truth. Lin Sun really wanted to know whether his parents were still alive or not. The broken blade spirit buzzed and stopped in the void. Then, the broken blade spirit's voice sounded, "You didn't ask me to help before, but now you're begging me to stop?" His voice was still indifferent, and there was a hint of grumbling in it, as if he was venting his dissatisfaction. Wu Kei laughed. "Ha, so it's because Little Master didn't ask him to help, and he took the initiative to attack. How embarrassing." He thought for a moment, and said seriously, "This only proves that this guy is very arrogant, and doesn't know how to be grateful." Swoosh! The broken blade spirit's terrifying sharpness burst out, and it locked onto Yi from afar. "You said that I don't know how to be grateful? You did not give in. All these years, how many sovereign weapons has Lin Sun taken to help you recover? But he has never asked you for anything." The sharpness on the broken blade spirit gradually faded. After a moment of silence, the broken blade spirit said, "You're right. In the end, I owe him." His voice was low, and there was a hint of imperceptible guilt. Boom! The next moment, Great Emperor Baki was suppressed by a terrible divine light. His huge body kept shrinking and finally returned to his original human form. However, his face was extremely pale, and he was bleeding all over as if he was imprisoned. His breath was extremely weak. Witnessing this scene, Wen slaughtered Demon Emperor, Red Rain Region Lord, and Xiancheng Region Lord felt dizzy, as if the sky had collapsed. Great Emperor Baki, the Hand of Darkness, was a terrifying existence that had shocked the dark world for countless years. But now, he was completely suppressed. Run! The same thought emerged in the hearts of Wen slaughtered Demon Emperor and the others at the same time. However, before they could act, they only saw a sharp flash in front of them, and then they completely lost consciousness. In the eyes of Lin Sun and the others, Wind, Slaughter, Demon Emperor, and the others in the far distance were killed silently, and their bodies were torn apart. There was no resistance, no scream, and they didn't even have time to react. Lin Sun couldn't help looking at the broken blade, and heard the voice of the spirit of the broken blade. From today on, Give me at most 100 years to recover. By then, I will help you kill the enemy of Tao." As soon as the voice fell, the broken blade swept into Lin Sun's body with a clang, and then fell silent. "Did I blame him wrongly?" He said in a daze, a little embarrassed. "You're right, and he did nothing wrong," Wu Kei explained with a smile. He looked at Lin Sun, who nodded. "Wu Kei is right." Only then did Yezi let out a sigh of relief. The world was silent, and the smell of blood was rolling between heaven and earth. Looking at great Emperor Baki, who was imprisoned in a coma in the distance, Lin Sun walked over. P.S. The 4th chapter is here. He had intended to continue writing, but he was informed to go out at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning, so he didn't dare to stay up late. In any case, he had posted 1 5th chapter and 2 4th chapters in the last 3 days of the month. He didn't ask for praise, so please don't criticize him. He wasn't afraid to tell you that he had 2 business trips next month, but they were both rejected by Goldfish. The purpose was very simple. Goldfish just wanted more time to concentrate on writing. Don't worry, after the National Day holiday, Goldfish will prepare for another breakthrough. In addition, on the 1st of tomorrow, he asked for a guaranteed monthly ticket for tomorrow. Chapter 2185. Lin Sun looked very calm. At the beginning of the battle, his face was full of extreme hatred and killing intent. But now it was all gone. There was only a kind of extreme calmness on his face. But the more it was so, the more uneasy it was. Great Emperor Baki, who was imprisoned and on the verge of death, felt a chill in his heart. He felt an indescribable sadness. As an 8th-layer martial emperor, he had slaughtered countless living beings over the years. His name was infamous, and no one dared to slander him. But now, he was reduced to a miserable state where he could be slaughtered by others. He couldn't bear such a huge gap. Seeing Lin Sun approaching, great Emperor Baki struggled crazily, but everything seemed to be so powerless and futile. "I won't let you die like this." Lin Sun stepped forward and looked down at the miserable great Emperor Baki, who was bathed in blood. His words made great Emperor Baki's heart sink to the bottom. It was as if he could foresee the endless torture and humiliation that awaited him in the future. Lin Sun suppressed great Emperor Baki with the Tower of Endless Way. Then he took a deep breath, looked at the world full of signs of destruction, and said, "Yezi, let's go." It was really time to go. After today, the Cold Sky territory was destined to become a place of trouble. On this day, Miayan Mountain was reduced to ruins. Demon Emperor Feng Tu, Region Lord Hongyu, and Region Lord Xianchong all died. On this day, great Emperor Baki, the 8th-level emperor known as the Hand of Darkness, was completely suppressed. No one knew whether he was dead or alive. On this day, the fact that Lin Sun, the successor of Mountain Heart, had turned into Tao Abyss of Sword Demon and all kinds of things he had done in the past 2 months under the guise of Region Lord He Kong was exposed. When the news came out, the Cold Sky territory was shocked. Countless OVA matches were shocked. It turns out that Tao Abyss of Sword Demon is Lin Sun, the successor of Mountain Heart, who is wanted by the whole world. He is the one behind all the turmoil. Some people were shocked. How could Lin Sun be so powerful in 2 months when he wiped out the top 10 regions? Some people exclaimed, "Great Emperor Bachi, the Hand of Darkness, was a murderous and ferocious 8th-level martial emperor, but he was suppressed." Some people found it hard to believe. I'm sure that Lin Sun must be protected by a terrifying master. Otherwise, it's impossible for him to do this with his strength. Someone spoke with certainty. He's doomed. Whether it's the godly, illuminating ancient sect or the other forces in the dark world, they will definitely start a massacre against him. Soon, the entire world of darkness was in an uproar. All 33 realms were in an uproar. The name of Lin Sun, the successor of Mount Inner Heart, was once again mentioned by countless people. The reason was simple. Even someone as powerful as Great Emperor Baki had suffered. This was undoubtedly too disappointing. In the dark world, Great Emperor Baki was like an evil god whose hands were stained with blood. Every time he appeared, there would be a storm of blood. He was so powerful that even emperors were afraid of him. However, Such a terrifying existence was suppressed by Lin Sun, the successor of Mount Fonsuan, who was only at the peak of the quasi-emperor realm. How could people not be shocked? Just what kind of terrifying trump card does this kid possess? No wonder a supreme existence, like Heavenly Emperor Shurtiendi, would issue in order to capture him. This kid is truly too heaven-defying. Great Emperor Baki is in trouble, and the domain of Cold Sky is in chaos. The godly illuminating ancient sect should be the most furious, right? In the godly illuminating ancient sect, a wisp of gloominess appeared on sect master Yu Kuan-Zi's face in the sacred place that was like an immortal paradise. The domain of Cold Sky was a territory controlled by the godly illuminating ancient sect. But now, with the death of 10 territory lords, including Demon Emperor Feng Tu, it had fallen into chaos. Great Emperor Baki was a terrifying existence in the godly illuminating ancient sect. But now, he was also in trouble. Under the continuous heavy blows, the godly illuminating ancient sect was also in turmoil and furious. Even Martial Uncle Baki is dead. Yu Kuan-Zi's expression was gloomy. Headmaster, if we don't take revenge, how can we face the godly illuminating ancient sect? How can we establish ourselves in the dark world in the future? I'm afraid we'll become a laughingstock. Someone said coldly. In the Taoist field, a group of big shots of the godly illuminating ancient sect sat with cold and angry expressions. When a tree falls, the monkeys scatter. In this dark world, I don't know how many people are waiting to see our godly illuminating ancient sect become a laughingstock. Headmaster, let alone others, Lin Sun is a wanted target of Shurtiendi. Based on this, we can't let him live. Voices sounded one after another, all full of murderous intent. Yu Kuan-Zi frowned and said in a low voice, "The power in his hands is enough to kill Martial Uncle Baki, who is in the 8th level of the Emperor realm. Do you think ordinary people can defeat him?" His words made everyone speechless, and their faces darkened. This was indeed depressing. Lin Sun was no longer the Lin Sun of the past, and he was no longer someone who could be bullied at will. Now, he didn't even put ordinary Emperor realm cultivators in his eyes. Coupled with the death of great Emperor Baki, it was too disappointing. Under such circumstances, who could possibly deal with him? Yu Kuan-Zi said in a deep voice. After that game of chess ended, 4 of our divine, illuminating ancient sects, 7 ancestral monarchs left for the other side of the galaxy. Now, there are only 3 ancestral monarchs here. Do you want me to ask the ancestral monarchs for help? The Emperor ancestors were like a stabilizing force to any ancient orthodoxy. They would not be dispatched unless it was a matter of life and death for the sect. If they dispatched such a terrifying and supreme existence just to deal with Lin Sun, the meaning would be completely different. Headmaster, do we have no choice but to swallow this humiliation? Someone's face was as gloomy as water. The little ants that they had looked down upon in the past were suddenly riding on their heads on this day. This feeling was simply enough to drive them crazy. Don't worry, the Hidden Land Realm is more eager to kill this kid than we are. Yu Kuan-Zi's eyes flickered. Of course, we can't be indifferent. As he spoke, he gave an order, "Someone, go and ask Martial Uncle Tian Song." Tian Song, Sword Emperor. All the bigwigs present were stunned, and an imposing figure appeared in their minds involuntarily. He once sneaked into the starry sky, ancient road, and killed 39 peerless enemies with his sword. He was regarded as the adjudicator of the Emperor realm, and countless souls were killed by the sinful sword. If the ferocity of great Emperor Baki was enough to make all living beings tremble, then the name of Tian Tsong Sword Emperor was enough to make all the emperors tremble. In the dark world, Tiandu Buddhist Emperor of the Hidden Land Realm, Tian Tsong Sword Emperor of the godly illuminating ancient sect, and Heavenly Destruction Martial Emperor of the Bronze Sparrow Tower were known as the 3 masters of assassination. In short, in the assassination of emperors, no one could compare with these 3. Immediately, everyone became excited. If Tian Tsong Sword Emperor took action, could Lin Sun escape the fate of being killed? Silently, a figure appeared in the Taoist field. He was dressed in plain clothes, with long hair hanging down and bare feet walking in the air. He was clearly standing there, but no one present seemed to notice him at all. When he spoke, the bodies of everyone shivered, and they were jolted back to their senses. "Give me Baki's soul lamp." The figure's voice sounded in different places. It was faint, calm, and indifferent, but it made people feel cold. Taking a deep breath, Yu Kuan-zi rose to his feet and passed over a bronze lamp with an incomparably dim light. He said, "Martial Uncle Baki's life is hanging by a thread, but he hasn't died yet. Whether he can be saved depends on Martial Uncle Tian Kong." After receiving the life lamp that belonged to great Emperor Baki, the figure disappeared without a trace. He did not make a single sound. On this day, Tian Tsung, Sword Emperor, known as the adjudicator of the Emperor realm and one of the three masters of assassination, quietly left the godly, illuminating ancient sect. Cold Sky Territory. In the governor's mansion of Silver City, Ji Lung sat there alone in a trance. So, Senior Daiyuan is Lin Sun, the successor of Mount Mind and Heart. He was so excited that he couldn't calm down. Now, the Cold Sky Territory had been in an uproar. People were talking about Lin Sun's deeds everywhere, which made Ji Lung both excited and indescribable. He finally understood what was going on. Only the successor of Mount Mind and Heart could have such incredible and heaven-defying means. "Senior, don't worry. The Cold Sky Territory will be under my control sooner or later. At that time, as long as you give the order, I will follow you into battle." Ji Lung made up his mind. He didn't know where Lin Sun went, but he knew that the power he controlled was given by Lin Sun. In the dark world, loyalty was the least valuable thing, but it was also the most valuable thing. Ji Lung would prove to Lin Sun that he was the most valuable one. Outside the governor's mansion, a figure stood there silently. He was dressed in plain clothes, and his long hair was loose. He was barefooted, and there was no fluctuation of aura around him. There were many people around him, but no one noticed his existence. In the end, he shook his head and took a step forward, disappearing on the spot and arriving outside Silver City. He was one of the three masters of assassination in the dark world and was known as the adjudicator of the Emperor realm. For countless years, his sword of sin had only killed those in the Emperor realm. Ji Lung was just a small character, and he didn't take him seriously. He didn't come to Silver City to find Ji Lung. "I will find you." Outside the city, Heaven Cluster Sword Emperor looked at the distant sky, and his mind was calm. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly frowned and looked not far away. A man who looked unkempt walked over drunkenly with a wine gourd in his hand. His beard and hair were messy, his eyes were blurry, his nose was red, and his steps were weak. He looked like an ordinary drunkard. But when he saw the drunken man, Heaven Cluster Sword Emperor's pupil shrank, and he said, "You are also looking for Lin Sun?" The man burped, and his eyes were hazy. He mumbled, "Idiot, can't you tell that I am looking for you?" Heaven Cluster Sword Emperor asked, "What is it?" The man raised his wine gourd and drank wildly. After a while, he smacked his lips and sighed. "You are really an idiot. When we meet, of course we will fight. I wish everyone a happy National Day. During the 7 days of holiday, Goldfish will ensure that there will be updates, as usual. After the holiday, we will prepare for the outbreak." Chapter 2186. Fight. The Heaven Destruction Sword Emperor frowned. "Your polearm should know that if we fight, we won't be able to decide the victor within 10 days or half a month." The polearm. The drunken man in front of him was none other than the Heavenly Destruction Martial Emperor of the Copper Sparrow Pavilion, one of the three peerless assassins. 10 days or half a month isn't enough. Martial Emperor Polearm shook his head like a rattle drum. "At least a year?" The Heaven Destruction Sword Emperor was silent for a moment. "What is the Bronze Sparrow Tower trying to do?" Martial Emperor Polearm reeked of alcohol as he mumbled, "Fight." The Heaven Destruction Sword Emperor said coldly, "What if I don't agree?" Whoosh! His figure vanished into thin air as soon as he finished speaking. "Run? Where can I run to now that I've set my sights on you?" As he muttered drunkenly, the dispirited man kicked out with his foot. The void rumbled, and a tunnel was torn open. His figure swayed as he walked in, disappearing without a trace. As soon as the two of them left, a shadow appeared in the sky, and it swiftly transformed into a black-clothed monk with an ordinary appearance. Looking in the direction where the Heaven Destruction, Sword Emperor, and Martial Emperor Polearm had disappeared, the monk smiled. "Fight to your heart's content. Leave Lin Sun to me." Just as he turned to leave, a big yellow dog walked over slowly from afar. It was an extremely ordinary-looking dog. The only difference was that the dog's fur was smooth and shiny, and its eyes were extremely bright. Even the way he walked was very arrogant, very calm, and very calm. If that was all, it would just be a dog raised by a rich family. But the black-robed monk froze the moment he saw the big yellow dog. His expression changed, and he turned to flee without hesitation. Undisguised disdain flashed in the big yellow dog's eyes. That was probably what a dog would look like. "Oh, whoa!" It let out a low growl and gave chase. Even as it gave chase, its head was raised proudly. Its eyes were full of arrogance, as if it was looking down on the world and all life. Most inconceivable of it all was that it had caught up to the black-clothed monk in merely an instant, and then it maintained the same speed as the black-clothed monk. The black-robed monk's expression changed again, and he had no choice but to stop. The big yellow dog opened its mouth and spoke in a disdainful tone. "Keep running. Why did you stop? Isn't Celestial Metropolis Buddhist Emperor, one of the 3 masters of assassination, most proficient in the art of 10,000 li in a flash, coming and leaving without a trace?" The black-robed monk was none other than the Celestial Metropolis Buddhist Emperor, a horrifying existence who walked in the darkness. Wherever he passed by, death followed. However, if someone were to see this scene, they would definitely go mad. Who would dare to believe that the Heaven Capital Buddhist Arch would be chased by a dog? And he actually caught up? Who had ever seen a dog dare to mock the Buddha Emperor of Heaven Capital in such a disdainful manner? This was simply subverting one's worldview. However, to the current Buddhist Emperor, the dog before him was even more terrifying than the most ferocious beasts of the ancient times. He could not help but show fear when he faced it. "Why are you chasing after me so relentlessly?" The Buddha Emperor of Heaven Capital Buddhist Emperor's voice was low, and he looked vigilant. Others might not know, but for an existence like him who had lived in the dark world for countless years, how could he not know how terrifying this big yellow dog was? What do you think? The big yellow dog tilted his head, and his face was full of mockery. "For that Lin Sun?" The Buddha Emperor of Heaven Capital Buddhist Emperor frowned. "Yes," the big yellow dog said. "How about it? Do you want to stop now? Isn't it better to rely on our own means?" The Buddha Emperor of Heaven Capital Buddhist Emperor's frown deepened. The big yellow dog appeared to be extremely arrogant, and spat out 2 words one by one. "No." The Buddha Emperor of Heaven Capital Buddhist Emperor said, "I heard that your master has offended Emperor Shi Tian. Even an arrogant person like him has to go into hiding. Aren't you afraid?" "Howl!" The big yellow dog let out a roar and pounced at the Buddha Emperor of Heaven Capital Buddhist Emperor. Asterisk Chi La. Asterisk a corner of his clothes was torn. Even with Buddha sovereignty on Du's heaven-defying means, he was almost bitten. One could imagine how ferocious Big Yellow was. Without hesitation or counterattack, the Buddha Emperor of Heaven Capital Buddhist Emperor fled again. He knew very well that once he was entangled with this dog, it would be difficult for him to get away. Therefore, when he was escaping this time, Buddha Dharshtian Du used all his strength. "Bald donkey, you can't escape," Big Yellow barked and chased after them with all 4 of his legs. Soon, the man and the dog disappeared from the cold sky domain. In a secret realm, the mountains, rivers, and everything were covered with a chaotic and obscure aura, which made the heaven and earth present an ancient and primitive charm. In the center of this secret realm, there was a platform on which 2 figures were sitting. A slender figure was sitting quietly. Strands of dreamlike power of law and order intertwined with each other, and a light rain was falling, which made her as mysterious as a fairy. This figure was she. The figure opposite her was also sitting quietly, but he looked like a supreme ruler of the starry sky. His lonely figure was like the backbone of heaven and earth. The two of them had been silent for a long time. Out of a kind of pride, or perhaps it was an invisible competition, neither of them was willing to be the first to speak. It had been 2 months since they entered this secret realm, but they had not spoken a word to each other. This was naturally very strange, but it could be seen that the two of them were very patient, as if this silence could last for countless years. Ding! A sound like the sound of jade pendants colliding broke the silence of the heaven and earth. The arrogant man frowned and looked at she, who was opposite him. He raised his hand, and a messenger jade slip fell into his hand. After looking at the contents of the jade slip, the man looked at she again and finally spoke. His voice was like the sonorous voice of the great Tao, which went straight to the heart. Only children will choose to remain silent to show their pride. I've saved you, so you should take the initiative to express your gratitude. She looked up at him, but did not speak. But the man seemed to have read the meaning of her gaze. It seemed to be saying, "You're the first to speak. That means you're inferior to me in terms of conceit and pride." This made the man raise his eyebrows involuntarily, feeling strange in his heart. For countless years, he had always been extremely conceited and arrogant. His arrogance was deep in his bones, and he was arrogant to the point that he considered everyone beneath him. He once said that the weight of the great Tao could not crush a person's pride. Even if the entire world was his enemy, his pride would not be affected. However, he did not feel that there was anything wrong with this. Or rather, he felt that this was normal. After all, he was such a person in the first place, a person who had pride throughout his life. Hence, he could not understand why she would use such a method to compete with him. Pride was their need to compare? So, he said very seriously, "Childish." She still did not say anything, only looking at him quietly. "Interesting." The man smiled mysteriously and waved the jade slip in his hand. "This contains information about the brat you care about the most. Aren't you curious?" She thought for a while and finally said, "He is your junior brother. You should be the one who cares about him the most." Her voice was as cold as ice. However, when she spoke, the man could not help but smile again. No matter what, he is still the successor of Fengsuan Mountain. Even if he has not obtained my approval, there's no harm in paying attention to his movements. As he spoke, he handed the jade slip to she. She hesitated for a while, but still took it and flipped through it. It took 2 months for a single person to cause such a disturbance. I wonder when I'll really want to meet him. The man's voice was calm. She raised her head and looked at him. When you were a peak quasi-emperor back then, how would you have dealt with a level 8 martial emperor? The man replied without hesitation. I would not have given a level 8 martial emperor a chance to suppress me. What if I ran into him? The man appeared extremely conceited. His tone was calm. There is no what if. She said, then I will tell you the answer. If you were him, with the arrogance you have shown, only death awaits you. Because you will not escape and will not ask for help. If you fight with your life on the line, it will be like throwing an egg against a rock. There is no other possibility than death. The man said indifferently, everything you said is just an assumption. I don't mind telling you that from the day I started cultivating, I have never given my enemies a chance to kill me. And now, you have seen for yourself that there are not many in this world who can kill me. She thought about it and said, you are more arrogant than I thought. The man corrected, I have pride in my heart and a lofty character, but I am not arrogant. The difference of one word is like the difference between heaven and earth. Oh, she replied and fell into silence. The man stood up and said, when the opportunity comes, I will let you leave, but not now. Also, that woman called Yin Xing used all her methods and luckily escaped with her life. If nothing goes wrong, she will definitely seek help from Shi Tiandi. At this point, the man revealed a secret. However, Shi Tiandi has already gone to the Endless Ruins. He will not be able to escape anytime soon. The Endless Ruins is not a place that anyone can enter and leave as they please. She glanced at him and said, you still haven't told me why you won't let me leave. The man said, if you stay by his side, you will only delay his opportunity to seek the Tao. Opportunity? Yes, an opportunity related to the immortal path of supremacy. With that, the man turned around and left. I know you were worried about him, but don't forget that I am his senior brother in name. A long time ago, I was actually waiting for him. Before he finished speaking, he had already disappeared from this secret realm. She sat alone on the Tao platform and fell into deep thought. Her graceful figure was dreamy and hazy. Several months ago, she fought with Yinxing. She was heavily injured and defeated her opponent. However, just as she was about to kill her opponent, an accident occurred. The Forbidden Order power suddenly descended and put her in a desperate situation. Chapter 2187. After the man walked out of the secret realm, he took a light step forward. The next moment, he was already above the vast starry sky. He stood with his hands behind his back, quietly looking down at the huge dark world in the distance. A long, long time ago, he knew that the forbidden power of order from the Permethar realm could only cover the starry sky ancient path, and could not replace the original power of order that belonged to the starry sky ancient path. The primordial world was an unknown place that had not been explored to this day, and the original power of order existed. This was also why the chaotic treasures that were born there could resist and dissolve the forbidden power of order. He also knew that the two tribulations of oblivion that had been born in the past were due to the changes in the original order of the starry sky ancient path. And the third tribulations of oblivion that would appear in a year would be the final transformation of the original order of the starry sky ancient path. This transformation was unstoppable. Even the forbidden power of order controlled by Shur Tiendi could not interfere. The path of the immortal sovereign, nirvana of freedom. The tribulations of oblivion, a single lotus blooms. This was a Taoist hymn that had been passed down for a long time, and almost no one knew its origin. But he knew. This Taoist hymn was left behind by his master, the master of Fengtsuan Mountain in the beginning of the primordial era. Until now, he still remembered very clearly that his master had paid an extremely heavy price to deduce the changes in the original order of order. Otherwise, with his master's cultivation, he would definitely not have left just like that. Thinking of this, a sense of loss welled up in the man's heart. After a long silence, he took a deep breath, and a hint of determination surged in his eyes. In these countless years, he had been guarding the dark world. Even when that game of chess broke out, he had never left, all for the sake of waiting for the single lotus blooming. This was his master's long-cherished wish. "My lord," a deep voice that sounded like thunder suddenly rang out, and a burly man that was several feet tall appeared out of thin air. His entire body was surrounded by terrifying black lightning, and every breath he took was like the rumbling of wind and thunder. "Speak." The man's expression was indifferent, and he stood there casually, as if he was aloof from the world. "Things are progressing very smoothly. The polearm of divine destruction has stopped the Heaven Cluster Sword Emperor." The burly man said respectfully, "But there's some trouble over at Big Yellow's side." At the end, his expression was strange. The man seemed to have guessed something a long time ago, and he said, "You're causing trouble again?" The burly man nodded and smiled bitterly. Big Yellow chased after the Tiandu Buddha Emperor all the way into the territory of the Hidden Land Realm. Along the way, he shouted that it was not easy for him to come out, so he must kill all the bald donkeys in the Hidden Land Realm. The man was startled. Then he laughed, which was rare. "Looks like Big Yellow knows me the best. He knows that I hate bald donkeys the most." The burly man said worriedly, "My lord, I heard that the Hidden Land Realm is going to send the Emperor Ancestor to deal with Big Yellow." "I'm worried," the man said disapprovingly. "You have to look at the owner before you beat a dog. Will they dare to kill Goldie?" The burly man said, "But they all said that Heavenly Emperor sure bore a grudge against you, master, and has gone into hiding, not daring to show up in the dark world again." The man fell silent for a brief moment before he responded, "They're right. I won't appear for the next year indeed. Tell Big Yellow that if it dares to ruin my plan, I'll kill it and make it into a stew." "Make it into a stew," The burly man almost drooled when he thought of the countless treasures of heaven and earth that had been eaten by the big yellow dog over the countless years, and of its plump and tempting tendons. Ever since Big Yellow appeared in the Bronze Sparrow Tower, old guys like them in the tower had not eaten dog meat for a long, long time. The reason was very simple. Whoever ate dog meat would be ruthlessly bitten by the crazy Big Yellow. Moreover, Big Yellow's combat strength was extremely abnormal. The old people in the Bronze Sparrow Tower all had painful experiences of being chased and bitten by dogs. The burly man swallowed his saliva without a trace and said, "My lord, I'll definitely convey your words to him." As he said this, he hurried away as if he was eager to get into action. "This year, I'll shelter you from the wind and rain. After a year, if you still can't get my approval," the man stared at the dark world, "then you don't deserve to be my little junior brother." In the primordial era, there was a son, Zhongqiu, who was born with a proud and unyielding character. The master of Fangtse Mountain took him as a disciple. He ranked second and was given the Taoist name Modest Jade. A modest gentleman was as gentle as a jade. It was a pity that Zhongqiu was not a gentleman at all. Since he started his cultivation, he had never known what modesty was. He was too arrogant. Some people said that he was arrogant. Some said that he had no respect for others, and some said that he was insufferably arrogant and would suffer sooner or later. Because of his arrogance, the Lord of Mind Mountain made an exception and took back his Taoist name. He sighed with emotion with a smile. Zhongqiu's arrogance is just like his heart. The higher his cultivation is, the prouder his heart will be. It can't be changed, and there is no need to change it. From then on, he was the proudest person in Mind Mountain among his peers. In the eyes of the world, there was no one who could be more arrogant than the Lord of the Bronze Sparrow Tower in the Dark World. In short, the word arrogance would run through Zhongqiu's life. There were 33 domains in the Dark World, and the Cold Sky territory was just one of them. After suppressing Emperor Baki, Lin Sun left the Cold Sky territory and came to the Qingfeng territory half a month later. In a valley full of evil mist, Lin Sun sat cross-legged in meditation. Around him, the forbidden formation of Taoism ran to isolate the erosion of the evil mist. In half a month's time, after he'd refined an enormous amount of various divine medicines and treasures of heaven and earth, his cultivation that had suffered from the backlash from the passing restriction divine ability had recovered a long time ago. His snow-white hair had turned jet black once more, and the vital energy throughout his body had recovered to its peak state. He was practicing in the sword sheath. Wu Kei returned to the insignificant bow, and so did the spirit of the broken blade. The three artifact spirits had played a crucial role in the battle with Great Emperor Baki, but they had also suffered heavy losses. Originally, their vitality had not been completely restored. After this battle, they were beaten back to their original state. In a short time, they were doomed to be unable to help Lin Sun. But Lin Sun was not worried. If the opponent was not Emperor Baki this time, but other people in the 8th level of the Emperor realm, Lin Sun would not fight so desperately. And it was destined that such a desperate fight would not happen again in the future. Whoosh, after a long time, Lin Sun woke up from meditation. Feeling the surging power and the boiling and roaring qi, he could not help but let out a long breath. Finally, he had completely recovered. Without any hesitation, Lin Sun took out the Tower of Endless Tao and made a move in his mind. Bang! Emperor Baki, who was completely imprisoned, fell to the ground. He was dying and his qi was exhausted. He woke up from coma. When his vision recovered, he looked at Lin Sun standing in front of him and couldn't help saying in a hoarse voice, "Little guy, you finally can't help but force me to tell you the truth?" "Force me to tell you?" Lin Sun shook his head. "No, I won't. I will never believe what you say." As he said, he waved his fingertips, and wisps of ethereal cyan light and shadow appeared. The light rain was hazy and magnificent. Bachi's pupils shrank, and he was inexplicably flustered. "If you want to search my soul, it's wishful thinking. Don't forget that I'm in the 8th level of the Emperor realm. I can crush all your spiritual power with a thought." Lin Sun did not say a word and turned a deaf ear to Bachi. only his fingertips gently pressed between Ba Qi's eyebrows. If Ba Qi's spiritual will was still there, he could have killed Lin Sun with a thought. Unfortunately, the spirit of the broken blade had already destroyed his spiritual soul and his cultivation. Only a remnant of his soul was left, and it was firmly imprisoned. In Lin Sun's eyes, Ba Qi was no longer the powerful 8th-level Emperor Realm cultivator, but a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. Little bastard, be careful not to go for wool, and come home shorn. How can a lowly thing like you shake the will of the Emperor Realm? Ba Qi's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. The bad premonition in his heart was getting stronger and stronger, and he couldn't help but roar. But soon his expression changed. What kind of power is this? How did you manage to infiltrate my mental state? No. His voice was filled with shock and anger. But before he could finish, Ba Qi's head tilted and he fell into a strange state of sleep. It was as if he was hypnotized. Lin Sun retracted his fingertips from between Ba Qi's eyebrows. This was a mysterious secret technique recorded in Senior Sister Ruo Su's Great Primordial Heart Sutra. It was called Autumn Dream. It could make the opponent fall into an unconscious sleep and lose all ability to resist. Buzz! Lin Sun took a deep breath and formed a strange seal with both hands. An invisible force emerged and drilled into Ba Qi's body. Suddenly, in front of the handprint condensed by Lin Sun's hands, countless fragmented scenes appeared, just like watching flowers on horseback. This was another type of secret technique called the Origin Heart Seal. It was capable of awakening all the memories and experiences in one's soul and mental state, and it transformed them into scenes that appeared before one's eyes. The scenes that appeared in front of Lin Sun were the scenes in Ba Qi's memory. An existence at the 8th level of Emperor Realm had lived for who knew how many years and experienced many things in the world. His memories could be said to be extremely vast. After the time it took for an incense stick to burn, Lin Sun found some of the truth he wanted to know. He finally knew that Ba Qi came under orders to destroy the Great Wall of Imperial Pass. The main battlefield of the Dao battle was the Great Wall of Ancient Desolation, the Great Wall of Imperial Pass, which was known as the first natural mode of all ages, the place where emperors stopped. If the Great Wall of Imperial Pass was destroyed, the Ancient Desolation could be controlled, and the Ancient Desolation had the title of the origin of all Tao. He also knew that the lower world he was familiar with was transformed from the original power of the Ancient Desolation that was shattered in the Dao battle. When he saw the scene when Ba Qi sneaked into the lower world with Yun Qingbai and came to Xiao Empire, Lin Sun clenched his hands quietly. His heart, which had always been tough, was inexplicably nervous. He had already speculated the truth of the Lin family's murder case, but after all, it was just speculation, and he had not seen those bloody scenes with his own eyes. But now, the scenes that happened in that year would be reproduced in Ba Qi's memory, and he would see them one by one. Chapter 2188. Fleeting scenes began to appear in front of Lin Sun's eyes like running water. Xiao Empire. The sky over heart-cleansing peak of Lin family in the Forbidden City was as dark as ink. The invisible power of taboo order covered the sky and the earth, making the world full of depression. Ba Qi pointed to heart-cleansing peak in the distance and said coldly, "You are born with sword bone, but it's not strong enough. There's a newborn baby there who is born with an unimaginably powerful spiritual vein. Go and get it." Beside him, Yun Qingbai, who was still a young man, looked lonely and aloof. But when he heard Ba Qi's words, he chose to refuse for the first time in his life. No. He remembered the bloody experience that happened in his family when he was young. He remembered the scenes that his parents suffered and lay in a pool of blood because of his sore bone. He didn't want the same thing to happen to him again. Crack! A ruthless slap on Yun Qingbai's face. Ba Qi said expressionlessly, "If you don't go, I will deprive you of your sword bone and give it to the baby as my successor. And you will die." Yun Qingbai trembled all over. He was silent for a long time. Then he lifted his foot and walked to heart-cleansing peak of Lin family in the distance. His white robe also became dim in the night. In the dark night, The power of taboo order was rolling, and a supreme and majestic will power swept over. At the same time, Ba Qi heard an order, "Do it." It was the voice of the nameless emperor. Ba Qi's face changed. He gritted his teeth and followed Yun Qingbai to heart-cleansing peak of Lin family. Heart-cleansing peak was bustling with lights like a dragon. But when Yun Qingbai appeared, the lively atmosphere was broken, and the battle inevitably broke out. The scene changed. Taking advantage of the chaos on heart-cleansing peak, Ba Qi walked silently into a candlelit room. The room was decorated with lanterns and many children's toys. It was full of warmth. On the bed, a baby was lying quietly in swaddling clothes. Ba Qi stepped forward with uncontrollable passion in his eyes. He raised a slender bone knife that had been prepared for a long time. A moment later, the baby let out a heart-wrenching cry. On his thin and tender chest, there was a long and thin wound, and dark red blood was gurgling out. Ba Qi put away the blood-stained white spirit vein and carefully hid it in a bronze box. "Be good. I only want your talent. Your life belongs to Venerable Emperor Nameless." "Oh, you're still young. You don't know Venerable Emperor Nameless." Just as Ba Qi was about to pick up the baby, something unexpected happened. Bang! The door exploded, and a tall and thin figure rushed in. When he saw the bloody and cruel scene in the room, he was shocked. His eyes almost popped out of their sockets as he attacked in rage. It was Master Lu. At this point, the image suddenly shattered and dissipated. Lin Sun had already clenched his fists so tightly that his nails dug into his palms and his knuckles turned white. His breathing was rapid, his eyes were bloodshot, and his face was ashen. These pictures were all for Ba Qi's memory. Although they were fragmented, they were enough for Lin Sun to see how the murder happened in Lin family. When the picture appeared again, Lin family's heart-cleansing peak had been covered by a raging sea of fire. Ba Qi stood in the void, holding Yun Qingbai firmly with his left hand. Yun Qingbai roared in a hoarse voice, "Why? Didn't you just seize the spiritual vein? Why did you kill people?" "Childish." Ba Qi looked at the sky. In the depths of the darkness, the forbidden power of order was rolling violently, and a man and a woman were fighting fiercely. Strictly speaking, it was the woman who was fighting. She was dressed in a green dress, her black hair fluttering, and her body exuded a terrifying and boundless power. "Did you see that? If it weren't for the power of Venerable Emperor's will, do you think anyone could come here at will?" Ba Qi's voice was still cold, but it was with uncontrollable fear and dread. But Yin Qingbai had already lost his mind. He kept shouting as if he had lost his mind. Why, old Lu, take my child away." In the depths of the darkness of the sky, the woman's anxious voice sounded. "You must let him live well." "Miss." The tall and thin figure of Lu Boya was enraged, and he let out a roar that was like a wild beast that was filled with rage and madness. "Go." A Taoist sword suddenly appeared in front of the woman, and she waved it gently. A huge crack leading to the outside world was forcibly cut open in the world covered by the forbidden power of order. Boom! The picture was broken again. Lin Sun's expression was uncertain, and the figure of the woman who was fighting with the forbidden power of order still appeared in his mind. She was dressed in a green dress, her black hair fluttering in the wind, and her whole body was filled with a boundless and terrifying aura. Mr. Lu called her Mississippi, and she waved her sword to cut heaven and earth, opening a way for Mr. Lu to escape from the forbidden power of order. Luo Qingxuan. She was his mother. Lin Sun's heart was filled with unspeakable depression, like a drowning man feeling a kind of suffocation. He gasped for breath. The truth of that year turned out to be like this. When the picture extracted from Ba Qi's memory emerged again, it was no longer the scene of Lin family's heart-cleansing peak. Instead, it was a dark void. "I saved your life from the hands of Lu Boya. From now on, this life of yours is mine," said Lu Boya. An indifferent and emotionless voice sounded in the darkness. This was the voice of the former Supreme, Venerable Nameless. Ba Qi promised without hesitation, "I'm willing to go through fire and water for you, your Majesty." "Remember Lu Boya and the baby he saved." No matter how many years later, as long as the baby appears, he will be regarded as a heretic and will be wiped out with all efforts. The voice of the former supreme, venerable, nameless, sounded. Yes, your majesty, Bachi promised. Then he took a deep breath and asked, Your majesty, that woman you shouldn't know. If you dare to ask more questions, you may lose your life. Bachi trembled all over and dare not say a word more. Have you heard of the Sword of Fate? The former supreme, venerable, nameless, suddenly asked. Bachi was stunned and blurted out, Your majesty, are you asking about the Taoist sword in the woman's hand? The former supreme, venerable, nameless sounded disappointed. It seems that you don't know either. I was so angry that I became muddle-headed. How could I ask a nonentity like you? Bachi's expression was uncertain. He dared not show any dissatisfaction at being regarded as a nonentity by the former supreme, venerable, nameless. The picture kept changing. Bachi took Yun Qingbai back to the ancient desolation realm and appeared in the heaven-reaching sword sect. Seeing this, Lin Sun couldn't help but wonder whether his mother was she alive or dead on the night of the Lin family's murder. Lin Sun was silent for a long time. Everything that he had seen before made him completely understand. On the night of the Lin family's murder, Yun Qingbai's appearance attracted the attention of the strong practitioners of the Lin family. Bachi took the opportunity to sneak in and seize the spiritual vein in Lin Sun's body. The reason why Bachi could do this so smoothly was that the appearance of the forbidden power of order led his parents away. When Master Lu came to rescue his parents, it was too late. He only managed to save Lin Sun, whose spiritual vein was taken away. After a long time, Lin Sun's expression became complicated with a trace of sadness. So many things happened that year, but why didn't Master Lu tell me? Was he worried about something? Suddenly, Lin Sun noticed that the picture in Bachi's memory changed, and a Taoist field full of sacred aura emerged. Headmaster, have you ever heard of the Sword of Fate? Bachi stood in the Taoist field and asked Yu Kuan-zi. Yu Kuan-zi was stunned. The Sword of Fate? Bachi said, Yes, a mysterious Taoist sword that can easily break the forbidden power of order. Yu Kuan-zi was surprised. Does this sword really exist? I only heard that one must find a treasure called the Sword of Fate if he wants to go to the ruins of Fate, one of the 4 ancient divine ruins. But it's just a legend after all. Since ancient times, no one has seen the Sword of Fate. Why do you say that this sword can break the forbidden power of order? Could it be that you've seen this sword before? Bachi looked disappointed and said, Nothing. I only know that the nameless supreme emperor cares about this sword very much. And this sword is in the hands of a woman whose life or death is unknown. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. The picture disappeared. Lin Sun was stunned. He also thought of the scene he had seen before. His mother, Luo Qingxuan, waved the sword and opened a way for Master Lu. The sword in her hand was obviously the Sword of Fate. Since it could easily break the forbidden power of order, this sword was certainly extraordinary. According to Yu Kuan-zi, the sect master of the Divine Sunshine Ancient Sect, this sword was also a key to the ruins of Fate. Lin Sun had already entered the ultimate ruins and entered the Kunlun ruins, so he naturally knew how mysterious and extraordinary the existence of the 4 great god ruins was. Among the 4 divine ruins, the most mysterious were undoubtedly the ruins of Fate and the ruins of Wonder. Could it be that Mother had planned to go to the ruins of Fate? Otherwise, why would the Sword of Fate fall into her hands? If that's the case, if Mother was still alive, would she have taken the Sword of Fate to the ruins of Fate to avoid the pursuit of the nameless Supreme Emperor? For a moment, all kinds of speculations appeared in Lin Sun's mind. Although he could not make a clear judgment in the end, he still firmly remembered the Sword of Fate. As he continued to look, the picture that appeared in Bachi's memory no longer had anything to do with the Lin family's murder. However, when he saw Bachi talking to Yu Kuan-zi and the others in the sect when he came to the Cold Sky territory, it attracted Lin Sun's attention. A year later, the Oblivion Tribulation descended. It was both a catastrophe and an unprecedented supreme creation. This creation was related to a Taoist hymn. the path of the immortal supreme being, nirvana in Ishvara, the oblivion tribulation of eternal oblivion, alone lotus bloomed. So, it's not only Regent Lord Huang Ho, even the Divine Sunshine Ancient Sect has their eyes on this nirvana in Ishvara. Chapter 2189. In Bachi's memory, Shi Tianyi had arrived in the Dark World a month ago, but left only 1 day later. It was said that he had gone to the ultimate, one of the 4 great ancient ruins. Knowing this, Lin Sun suddenly realized that the purpose of Shi Tianyi going to the ultimate was the ruins of Fengsuan Mountain. However, the gate of Fengsuan Mountain had long been destroyed. What was Shi Tianyi going to do? At the same time, Lin Sun also heard that Tower Master Bronze Sparrow had refused to see Shi Tianyi, and that Shi Tianyi bore a grudge against him. This guy is really arrogant. Lin Sun sighed with emotion. After arriving in the Dark World, he also learned that Tower Master Bronze Sparrow was regarded as the most arrogant person in the whole world. But he still didn't expect that Tower Master Bronze Sparrow would dare to directly refuse Shi Tianyi. In the entire starry ancient road, there were few who dared to do so. It should be known that in the face of Shi Tianyi's threat, the black-yellow Taoist court could only bow its head and surrender. In such a comparison, it could be imagined how amazing Tower Master Bronze Sparrow's refusal was. Lin Sun still didn't know that this extremely arrogant Tower Master Bronze Sparrow was the second successor of Fengsuan Mountain, Zhongqiu. But this didn't hinder his admiration for Tower Master Bronze Sparrow. In other words, those who dared to fight against Shi Tianyi were worthy of admiration. When Bachi woke up, he saw Lin Sun standing in front of him, holding a dazzling and sharp saber in his hand. Bachi narrowed his eyes. The most precious treasure of the Shang family. What are you going to do? Lin Sun pointed to his chest and said, "You dug away my spiritual vein that year. Today, I will naturally return the favor." Puff! Before his voice died away, Lin Sun had already thrust the saber into Bachi's chest. The blade easily pierced through his muscles, bones, and skin, and reached the place where his heart was. As Lin Sun twisted his wrist, a dull sound of explosion mixed with scarlet blood splashed out from Bachi's chest. As an 8th-level Emperor Realm cultivator, Bachi had experienced countless dangers in his life, so he naturally wouldn't be frightened by such a small trick. As if he couldn't feel the pain, he stared at Lin Sun expressionlessly and said, "You don't know what the 8th-level Emperor Realm is. With your strength, even if you smash my bones, destroy my body, and mince my soul, you can't kill me." His tone was calm, and it revealed a ridiculing tone of superiority. Lin Sun didn't seem to be aware of it. He cut open Bachi's heart meridian with the sharp blade and said, "I just want to give you a tooth for a tooth. I don't intend to kill you like this." He paused for a moment and stared at Bachi's chest that was still gurgling with blood. His gaze was calm like an ancient well as he added, "I've said it before, you only have one ending." His voice was even calmer and unperturbed. Looking at Lin, who was not affected at all, Bachi felt a chill in his heart and asked, "What's the ending?" "A life worse than death," Lin Sun said casually. It was merely 4 words, yet it caused Bachi's expression to change. Worse than death meant that he could neither live nor die. It also meant that he would suffer endless torment, torture, and humiliation, and he would never be able to extricate himself. "Aren't you worried that there might be some accidents in the future?" Bachi took a deep breath and said calmly, "As long as I seize a chance, you will definitely die. Don't worry. Even if I die, I will let you live a life worse than death, and you will never be able to extricate yourself." Lin Sun looked calm. As he said, he took out the Tower of Endless Tao and suppressed Bachi again. Clatter, the next moment, Lin Sun put away the forbidden formation that covered the canyon and flashed away. In his palm, an antique bronze mirror appeared, which was a gift from Qing Ying, the mysterious woman of Mist Hidden House. It was called Guiding Bronze Mirror, which contained a map. With the guidance of the map, one could reach the Dark Land. The Dark Land was the primordial ancestral land of Mist Hidden House. Qing Ying once said that as long as Lin Sun went to her, she would tell Lin Sun something that would do him no harm. Lin Sun was not interested in this. What he was really interested in was whether Qing Ying knew some extremely secret things with her ability. For example, the clues related to the second senior brother of Mountain Heart. For example, the mystery contained in the sentence, "The one who tied the bell should untie it." The sun rose and set. Time flew by. The sensation caused by Lin Sun, the successor of Mountain Heart, gradually died down as time went by. For the strong who made a living in the dark world, their lives were faced with life and death at any time. It was impossible for them to pay too much attention to the life and death of others. The order to arrest Lin Sun was still carried out, but only the big forces, such as the Hidden Land Realm and the Divine Sunshine Ancient Sect, were really dispatched to carry out this task. However, these big forces also knew that it was more difficult to arrest a young man who could suppress Great Emperor Baki than to find a needle in a haystack. Half a month later, Lin Sun crossed 3 territories and entered the Donghong territory. Soon after entering the Donghong territory, Lin Sun successfully condensed the consciousness and cultivation of the Platinum Taoist body. At the same time, Lin Sun's cultivation had improved, and there were signs that he was approaching the consummation of the 3rd heaven of Quasi-Emperor. The Sword Emperor of Chaos had mostly recovered from his injury, but he was still firmly suppressed when he fought with Lin Sun. In this regard, the Sword Emperor of Chaos was silent for a long time and only said one sentence. Since ancient times, you're the first person to surpass the natural chasm of the Emperor Realm and defeat a person in the 1st level of the Emperor Realm. Although I hate you to the core, I have to admit that you are really abnormal. Lin Sun didn't comment on this. He didn't tell the Sword Emperor of Chaos that if he used the other doppelgangers together, the latter would only be defeated faster and more miserably. 1 month later, in a deep forest that covered the sky and the sun, Lin Sun sat cross-legged in meditation. During this period of time, he didn't hurry on his journey, but regarded this journey as a cultivation. When he traveled day and night, he also calmed down and immersed himself in cultivation. The turbulence, blood, and killing of the dark world had long been unable to affect him. Even if he encountered some trouble along the way, he could easily solve it in a flash. Buzz! With a strange wave, 5 doppelgangers of the Great Way appeared around Lin Sun. Greenwood, yellow soil, black water, red fire, and platinum. Each of them, with consciousness and cultivation, had a natural resonance with Lin Sun. So far, Lin Sun had passed on the power of inheritance he possessed to the 5 doppelgangers of the Great Way to comprehend and deduce. As for himself, he spent all his time and energy on refining his own cultivation and martial arts. Things like comprehending Taoist scriptures, perceiving the Great Way, deducing secret methods, and so on, all didn't need his time and energy. In the past, he cultivated alone, but now it was like 6 of him cultivating together. Under such a unique way of cultivation, all the power Lin Sun mastered began to transform by leaps and bounds. After all, today he didn't lack Taoist gems, magic medicines, Taoist scriptures, and secret methods. With the help of the doppelgangers of the Great Way, it was difficult for his strength not to improve. It was also on this day that Lin Sun's cultivation reached the fulfillment of the 3rd sky of the Quasi-Emperor realm. He was only 1 step away from becoming an emperor. Once he took this step, he would be a great emperor on the road to extinction. If he couldn't cross it, all his cultivation would be in vain. Lin Sun had a strong hunch that becoming an emperor would be the most difficult and terrible hurdle he had encountered so far in his cultivation. Since ancient times, quasi-emperors could be seen everywhere on the ancient road of the starry sky, but the supreme quasi-emperors were as rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns. Whether in the primitive age, the ancient age, or in the present world, among thousands of quasi-emperors, there might not be one supreme quasi-emperor. All this was because the word supreme was too difficult and obscure. In contrast, the people in the emperor realm were also rare. In general, if there was one emperor realm and a force, it could be called a first-class force in the world. Like in the cold sky territory of the dark world, how vast the territory was, but but only the 10 major territory lords had the cultivation of the Emperor realm. This was why the Emperor realm was regarded as the supreme, because in the eyes of the strong people under the Emperor realm could be called the strongest power in the world. And compared with the people in the Emperor realm, there were even fewer people in the Emperor realm. The Emperor realm was like a natural moat, blocking the path of countless cultivators. To establish the cultivation of the Emperor realm on the road to the supreme was more difficult than ascending to the heavens. On the ancient road of the starry sky, in the countless years since ancient times, the number of people who had set foot on the road to the supreme of the Emperor realm could be counted on one's fingers. And such existences were all terrifying characters who led the way on the road to the Emperor realm. And the power they possessed was enough to make ordinary Emperor realm cultivators tremble in fear. According to ancient records, in the early days of the primitive age, there were many supreme great emperors who appeared out of nowhere. And in the ancient age, there would be a peerless hero who set foot on the road to the supreme Emperor realm every once in a while. Until nearly 100,000 years ago, there was very little news of an expert setting foot on the road to the supreme Emperor realm on the ancient road of the starry sky. For example, in the recent trip to the ancient immortal forbidden area, the core successors of the 6 major Tao courts had gone there to fight for the chaos treasure, but more importantly, to set foot on the supreme Emperor realm. Only then would they have the opportunity to seek the proof of the supreme Emperor realm. Like Mi Wuya, Ling Hongzhuang, and other peerless geniuses, all had such ambitions and ambitions. Lin Sun was no exception. Now he was already at the perfection of the third heaven of the quasi-emperor realm, and the cultivation experience of these years also made him more aware of how difficult and dangerous it was to become an emperor realm. But he would not back down. What he sought was the road of invincibility in the past, present, and future. If he couldn't even become an emperor realm, how could he talk about invincibility in the future? However, Lin Sun was not in a hurry. The perfection of his cultivation did not mean that his own cultivation had reached the extreme perfection. For example, the understanding of the Great Way and the tempering of his own Tao, there was still room for further tempering and improvement. In any case, at the moment when his cultivation reached the perfection of the quasi-emperor realm, Lin Sun had a hunch that the day when Zhu Ying became an emperor was not too far away. Chapter 2190. Shilua City. It was one of the cities controlled by the true absolute domain lord, one of the 6 domain lords of the Donghong domain. By the window of a restaurant in the city, Lin Sun, who was dressed in a moon-white robe and exuded a calm aura, was drinking alone. He was recalling the map in the guide copper mirror. He had passed through 5 domains and walked for more than a month since he left the cold sky domain. Based on the map of the land of darkness, he had traveled more than half the distance. If everything went well, he would arrive there in about 20 days. A group of people walked into the restaurant. They were led by a dignified old man with snow-white hair and a beard. Beside him were a group of men and women. Their arrival attracted the attention of many diners in the restaurant. The reason was that their aura was very different from that of those who had been in the dark world for a long time. They were graceful and proud, like the rising sun, shining brightly. Generally speaking, experts who had been in the dark world for many years were fierce, violent, and ruthless. They were like hungry wolves who were ready to risk their lives at any time. Their every move was fierce. They were a group of people who had just arrived in the dark world. They hadn't been soaked in the bloody and turbulent world yet. When this judgment came to the diners' minds, the look in many people's eyes changed. Lin Sun also noticed this scene. He could even clearly tell the surprise, greed, and killing intent surging in the diners' hearts. They were like a pack of hungry wolves staring at a flock of fat sheep that had suddenly crawled up to them. But Lin Sun also knew that if they dared to attack, they would definitely die, because the old man in the lead was a real Emperor Realm figure. In addition, many of the women following him were at the peak of the quasi-Emperor Realm. Even the weakest one was at the peak of the 3rd level of the quasi-Emperor Realm. It was hard not to attract Lin Sun's attention based on this fact alone. It should be noted that peak quasi-emperors were extremely rare. But now there were several of them, and they were obviously from the same force. This was very unusual. The white-haired old man and his group sat down and ordered some food and wine. One of the beautiful women, who was wearing a luxurious robe with golden threads and a jade belt, glanced around and said with a frown, "The smell here is really disgusting." Many people agreed with his words. A young man in a golden robe smiled as he waved a jade fan and said, "Junior Sister Lan Ling, this is the dark world after all. It's filled with barren lands and unruly people. How could our primordial world compare to it?" His words were filled with incomparable pride and superiority. The nearby diners stopped talking. Their eyes flashed, but they didn't say anything. Only they knew what they were thinking. The woman called Lan Ling nodded and said, "Senior Brother Fei Lang is right. I've heard of it as well. The world of darkness is viewed as a place of extreme evil, and only those extremely vicious and evil people that the world can't tolerate would flee to this place to seek refuge." They spoke without restraint and didn't try to conceal their words. It was as if they weren't afraid of being overheard by others and were full of confidence. The leading old man with snow-white hair and beard, who looked like an immortal, suddenly laughed. "Now that you're here, if you feel uncomfortable, you can just take action. Elegance and self-restraint never belong to the dark world." His words caused the eyes of all the men and women to light up. Bang! The waiter walked over and threw down a table of food and wine in a rude manner. He said, "A total of 90,000 Tao crystals. Who's going to pay?" Fei Lang, Lan Ling, and the others were stunned. There were only 2 pots of wine and 4 plates of special flavors on the table. In the outside world, there were only a few thousand Tao crystals at most. But here, they dared to ask for 90,000 Tao crystals. "Don't tell me you're treating us like fat sheep and slaughtering us." Fei Lang's face darkened. The waiter sneered. "Everyone, this is the dark world. Resources are scarce and extremely barren. Especially in this land of turmoil, opening a restaurant requires a huge investment. The price of the food and wine here naturally can't be compared to the outside world." Fei Lang and the others were skeptical. A nearby diner said in a strange tone, "You're new here, right? 90,000 Tao crystals is really not expensive. If you don't believe me, why don't you ask the others? Seeing that you're all dressed in extraordinary clothes, I thought you were extraordinary existences. Who would have thought? You're still haggling over 90,000 Tao crystals. What a joke. If you can't afford it, leave quickly." Some of the other diners followed suit. Lin Sun looked on coldly. He knew that the test had already begun. If these guys who had just arrived showed any trace of timidity, they would be targeted. But Lin Sun also knew that this kind of test was really low-end. Fei Lang, Lan Ling, and the others all had ugly expressions on their faces. It wasn't that they didn't have Tao crystals, but they felt that they had been killed. However, they also doubted whether 90,000 Tao crystals was really the market price. If they were really wrong, wouldn't they have wronged the waiter? Bang! The white-haired old man raised his hand, and the first man who spoke in a strange tone at the table not far away was directly obliterated, his body lying on the ground. Although his body was intact, his divine soul had been erased. The originally lively atmosphere was suddenly replaced by a silent and oppressive atmosphere. All the diners couldn't help but change their expressions. In their experience, the newcomers who had just come to the dark world, no matter how strong they were, would show great forbearance when they didn't know the situation clearly. Who would have thought that the white-haired old man would kill him directly without saying a word? The waiter realized that something was wrong and was about to leave. But the next moment, his figure swayed and he fell silently on the ground. His eyes were dilated and full of confusion. This scene caused Lan Ling, Fei Lang, and the others to be stunned. The person who mocked might deserve to die, but the waiter seemed to have died a worthless death. At this moment, the white-haired old man said indifferently, "In the dark world, there is no need for a reason to kill, and there is no need to have any scruples. Remember, we are different from them. They are villains who have fallen into the darkness, and each of them has committed unforgivable bloody crimes. Not killing them is mercy. Killing them is to enforce justice on behalf of heaven and eliminate evil for all living beings in the world. In a final analysis, as long as you are happy, even if you slaughter this city, it is a good deed for the world. Don't have any scruples. The old man looked graceful. Although his words were calm, they revealed full of disdain, which was from the bottom of his heart. The eyes of Fei Lang, Lan Ling, and the others lit up, and they seemed to be lost in thought and seemed to have come to an understanding. On the other hand, the expressions of the customers present here changed indeterminately, and they seemed as if they were sitting on a bed of needles. They suddenly noticed that it was extremely likely that this was a group of ferocious tigers in sheep's clothing. A few customers couldn't refrain themselves from standing up and intending to leave. Swoosh! Suddenly, Fei Lang stood up abruptly and drew his saber before slashing out. A dazzling saber chi flashed out and flashed lightly before beheading the heads of those customers. The most ingenious thing was that even though the saber chi was fierce and overbearing, it didn't harm the restaurant in the slightest. Otherwise, this restaurant would have been instantly destroyed by this saber strike. Swish! Fresh blood sprayed as numerous headless corpses fell to the ground. Fei Lang sheathed his saber, and his expression carried a trace of excitement as he said, "Martial uncle, I suddenly noticed that this dark world is really a good place to temper the martial Tao. In the outside world, there are too many restrictions in order to fight and kill, and I have to consider a great deal. But in here, I'm entirely capable of killing without the slightest scruple." Lan Ling and others were all stunned. Looking at Fei Lang, who seemed to have changed into a different person, some shackles in their hearts seemed to have been broken. The white-haired old man praised with a smile, "You've done a good job. Only by experiencing the tempering of blood and life and death can you be the best whetstone. In the outside world, many descendants of ancient orthodoxies will choose to come to the dark world to temper themselves by killing. This kind of people are regarded as trial testers. So I can also fight them." Lan Ling was eager to have a try. The white-haired old man laughed. "Of course, you can regard them as weeds, pigs, dogs, livestock. In short, don't regard them as people like yourself." Lin Sun, who had been looking on coldly, raised his eyebrows. This sentence was tantamount to scolding him. In particular, the white-haired old man's point of view seemed to regard the dark world as a slaughterhouse, and he didn't regard the people here as human beings at all. This made Lin Sun quite repulsed. He had been in the dark world for nearly half a year, but he had never regarded people as livestock. In his heart, he only adhered to the idea of, "I won't offend others if they don't offend me." He had never killed innocent people indiscriminately. Even if he also knew that there were hardly any good people in the dark world, this was not a reason for anyone to kill indiscriminately without scruples. Of course, this was just a conflict of ideas. Lin Sun would not get angry because of it. "Senior, please spare our lives. We have eyes but fail to see. Please spare our cheap lives." Those diners were all frightened. They knelt on the ground and begged. "Bastards like you don't have the face to live anymore." Lan Ling took a deep breath and turned over her hand. A fiery red glow swept out. In an instant, several people were burned to death and turned into ashes. There were also some people who wanted to rush out of the door and escape. However, they were all killed by the joint forces of Fei Lang and the others. The smell of blood was strong. There was a trace of excitement in each of their eyes. Some people couldn't help looking at Lin Sun, who had not taken any action, with killing intent surging in their eyes. In fact, in addition to Fei Lang and others, Lin Sun was the only diner in the restaurant. "Wait a minute." Suddenly, the white-haired old man stopped Fei Lang and others from continuing. He looked at Lin Sun and said thoughtfully, "Why don't you beg for mercy or run away?" Fei Lang, Lan Ling, and others also looked at Lin Sun, but in their eyes, they were more eager to have a try. They thought that although Lin Sun looked a little different from others, he was also a target to be slaughtered without scruples. Lin Sun ignored them and drank up a pot of wine. Then he stood up, carried the bronze sword case on his back, and walked out of the restaurant. From beginning to end, He didn't look at others. But in the eyes of the white-haired old man, Lin Sun's behavior could only be described as arrogant. Chapter 2191. Stop! Someone scolded, his tone full of command. Lin Sun ignored him and walked forward calmly, which made the men and women look a little unsightly. Let him go. The white-haired old man spoke, his eyes frightening. Fei Lang, Lan Ling, and the others all revealed a look of surprise. It was not until Lin Sun's figure disappeared that the white-haired old man said slowly, "You have to remember that in the dark world, if you are regarded as an enemy, then the enemy will not care about your identity and background. If you meet someone you can't see through, even if you want to kill him, remember not to act rashly." At the end, the white-haired old man smiled. "Of course, maybe I was wrong, but it's better to be safe than sorry." Fei Lang said in surprise, "Even you can't see through that guy's strength. That's a peerless quasi-emperor, but he's different from the others, especially the confidence he showed, which is definitely not fake. This undoubtedly proves that he is not afraid of us." The white-haired old man said, "Because of this, it's better to be careful." His words were steady and steady. Some people looked thoughtful, while others were quite unconvinced. Fei Lang said coldly, "If I have a chance to meet him next time, I must find out the kid's strength. Let's go. Before the nirvana of freedom appears a year later, we have one more thing to do." The white-haired old man led a group of people out of the restaurant. "Uncle, where are we going this time?" Lan Ling asked curiously. The white-haired old man said softly, "Myriad Star City, wonderful lotus gathering." Lin Sun couldn't help feeling slightly surprised that the white-haired old man and the others did not catch up with them until they left Shua City. That old guy has good eyesight. Lin Sun shook his head and put this little episode behind him. In the following time, he continued to hurry along the road, moving forward according to the direction of the copper mirror map. Along the way, he was alone, carrying a sword case, trekking over mountains and rivers, enjoying the sunset glow and drinking the dew. His state of mind was unprecedentedly calm and leisurely. Walking was like Zen, sitting was like Zen, silent and natural. This was both a journey and a cultivation. The turbulent and chaotic dark world seemed to have nothing to do with him. Another half a month passed in a hurry. Yinhua Domain, one of the 33 domains of the dark world. It had been controlled by the forces of the Hidden Land realm since ancient times. In the vast territory of the Cloudflower region, there were countless cities, and in almost every city, there was a Xitigarbha temple. In every temple, there was a statue of a divine beast. It was said that the statue was the original face of the founder of the Hidden Land realm, the Xitigarbha Emperor. Cloud City. It was one of the many cities in Yinhua Domain. When Lin Sun walked into the city alone, he found that there were many barefoot, black-clothed, and indifferent-looking monks from the Hidden Land realm among the practitioners in the city. Wherever they went, the ferocious-looking experts all moved to the side and revealed respectful and submissive expressions. Lin Sun saw an expert in the quasi-emperor realm bowing his head to a group of black-robed monks in the sage realm. This surprised Lin Sun. From this, it could be seen how powerful the Hidden Land realm was in the territory controlled by the Hidden Land realm. Even ordinary monks didn't dare offend them when they went out. Have you heard? Those experts from the various worlds have already headed to Myriad Star City from all directions. Supposedly, they're going to participate in the Wonderful Lotus Banquet. The Wonderful Lotus Banquet? Exactly. This is an unprecedented grand event. Supposedly, it's jointly held by the two overlords of the Hidden Land realm and Divine Illumination sect, and it's for the sake of the supreme fortune related to rebirth of freedom. I've heard about it too. Recently, the 6 great Tao courts, the 10 great war clans, and some primordial imperial clans from other galaxies have all sent powerful teams to the dark world. It seems like they're all here for the nirvana unfettered. A wave of discussion drew Lin Sun's attention. In fact, there was utterly no need for Lin Sun to inquire about it, as he'd quickly found out about all this. Because the streets and alleys of Cloud City were filled with people discussing matters related to the Wonderful Lotus Banquet, and it was difficult for others to not know about it. The third tribulation of oblivion would descend 1 year from now, and rebirth of freedom would appear in the world along with it. A piece of news like this had drawn the attention of everyone in the universe since a long time ago. After all, it was related to the eternal exalted path, and such a supreme fortune had never appeared since the ancient times until now. So how could anyone not care about it? Moreover, everyone knew that the dark world was the place where the tribulation of oblivion would erupt. It was precisely because of this that some of the ancient powers in the universe had set out successively during this recent period of time. All of them relied on the teleportation formations of the Divine Illumination sect and the Hidden Land realm to arrive at the Dark World, and it instantly caused the entire Dark World to be stirred. After all, in the past, the Dark World was the land of evil that was most detested and rejected by the cultivators of the world. Even the three giants of the Dark World were hostile to the sects of the world, and they could be said to be incompatible like fire and water. Yet now, this situation of confrontation and hostility seemed to have been broken, and when the great powers of the outside world arrived successively, they even relied on the teleportation formations of the three giants of the Dark World. On the other hand, the holding of the wondrous Lotus Banquet was even more astounding. It was the Hidden Land realm and Divine Illumination sect that held the banquet, whereas the participants of the banquet were the various great powers of the starry sky. This undoubtedly seemed to be extremely unbelievable. But when Lin Sun found out about all this, he guessed the reason at the first possible moment. The reason the great powers of the starry sky were able to bury the hatchet and cooperate with the dark world was probably because of the eternal exalted path, rebirth of freedom. This was extremely normal. The great figures of the Hidden Land realm and Divine Illumination sect from the Dark World had similarly come from the Hidden Land realm and Divine Illumination sect, and they'd helped the previous Emperor Nameless deal with Mount Heart. Looks like those fellows I encountered in Shiluwa City have come for the rebirth of freedom that's about to appear a year from now. Lin Sun recalled the white-haired old man, Fei Lang, Lan Ling, and the others, and only now did he understand why these figures that boasted of being extraordinary would appear in the Dark World. Unfortunately, even though there were many people discussing the wondrous Lotus Banquet on the streets, no one knew exactly what this banquet was for. The only thing they could be sure of was that this banquet was surely related to rebirth of freedom. It's fine if I don't go to such a place. Lin Sun pondered for a short while before he made a decision. The wondrous Lotus Banquet will be held in Myriad Star City 10 days from now, and Myriad Star City wasn't too far away from Convergence City that Lin Sun was currently at. But Lin Sun still decided not to go and join the fun. No matter if it was the Hidden Land realm, Divine Illumination sect, or the various great powers from the heavens, all of them had received orders from Heavenly Emperor Shur, and they were searching for him all over the world. To Lin Sun, the wondrous Lotus Banquet was like a huge vortex, and once his identity was seen through, the consequences would be unimaginable. Subsequently, Lin Sun strolled about for a while, and he was just about to leave the city and continue on his way when he suddenly noticed an ancient temple standing towering not too far away. The temple was tall and lofty, and it towered into the sky. It was completely pitch black, and it seemed as if it was covered in a layer of eternal darkness, ancient and solemn. Before the temple hung a horizontal board with the words Ksitigarbha Temple. At this moment, there were many strong practitioners going in and out of the Ksitigarbha Temple. Every one of them looked solemn and pious. Look, that's the Ksitigarbha Temple. It's in the territory of Yunhua Domain. If you want to enter the city and get protection, you don't need to pay any Taoist gems or treasures. You only need to go to the Ksitigarbha Temple and worship it devoutly every 7 days. Because of this, many people like us who can't get a foothold in the dark world will come to the territory of the Hidden Land realm to seek protection. Someone nearby said excitedly, let's go there too." Lin Sun looked up and saw that person calling his friends and walking towards the Ksitigarbha Temple together. "As long as I worship it devoutly, I can get protection?" Lin Sun's dark eyes were deep as he looked at the temple that was covered in darkness in the distance. An uncontrollable thought emerged in his heart. Is there really such a good thing in this world? While thinking, Lin Sun walked towards the Ksitigarbha Temple. Before entering Inhua City this time, he also heard that in the vast territory controlled by the Hidden Land Realm, there was a Ksitigarbha temple in every city in which a statue of a divine beast was enshrined. It was said that the divine beast was the original appearance of Ksitigarbha Emperor, the founder of the Hidden Land Realm. Lin Sun couldn't help but be curious and wanted to find out the truth. After all, he and the Hidden Land Realm were sworn enemies. After entering the temple, Lin Sun only felt that it was dark in front of him, as if he had walked into a silent and dark world. The first thing that came into view was a vast Taoist field, paved with dark bricks. The color was so dark that it made people's heart palpitate. Bronze Buddhist lamps floated in the surroundings, and their flames flickered, sprinkling down a holy light. At the end of the Taoist field was a high Buddhist niche with a height of 300 meters. On both sides of the Buddhist niche, there were stone statues of lions, tigers, giant elephants, unicorns, xieji, xuelwan, and other beasts. There were more than 3,000 statues in total. Each stone statue was lifelike, exuding different power and charm, as if it could wake up from silence at any time. In the Buddhist niche, there was also a statue of a beast, but its appearance was extremely strange. Its head was like a lion and tiger, its mouth like a crocodile, its eyes like a snake, its ears like a cow and a horse, its scales like a fish and a snake, its feet like a phoenix, its horns like a cow and deer, its beard like a dragon, and its tail like a dog. Lin Sun had also heard some myths and legends about the 4 odd beasts, but the statue in front of him could be called 9 odd beasts. It sat cross-legged on the Buddhist shrine with its eyes closed, and its body towered like a mountain. Its entire body was covered in darkness that was hazy like mist, and it was like a god that came from the darkness and emitted a might that seemed as if it looked down upon the world. It was truly too strange and horrifying. No matter who saw it, their minds would be shaken. Even Lin Sun couldn't help narrowing his eyes and feeling inexplicably cold in his heart. Was this the founder of the Hidden Land Realm? Thanks to Promise and Heart, book friend 36009917, Little Brother Reading, and Yomail for their gifts and support. Chapter 2192. The Hidden Land Realm, one of the 3 dark giants, was so powerful that it could even cause fear in the starry sky. The founding ancestor of such a terrifying power was actually a divine beast of the 9 odd beasts. This was naturally inconceivable. After staring at the huge Buddha niche for a while, Lin Sun moved his eyes and looked around. Darkness, like a veil, shrouded the temple. On the vast Taoist field, many figures had already knelt on the ground. Regardless of their cultivation, all the strong men kowtowed to the ground devoutly. In front of each of them, there was an incense burner in the shape of a black lotus, in which a stick of incense was lit. The incense flickered, giving off wisps of refreshing fragrance. The atmosphere was extremely solemn. Noticing the wisps of incense curling up like mist, Lin Sun narrowed his eyes. Buzz, quietly, the spirit sitting cross-legged in Lin Sun's sea of consciousness opened its eyes and condensed a complicated and obscure seal in front of it. At the same time, a wisp of mysterious light appeared in Lin Sun's pupils. This was a secret method recorded in the Taoist scripture Qi Min Jin taught by Bo Swansea, the 8th senior brother of Mount Fong Siyuan. It was called Divine Eye. By using this secret method, one could see through the changes of Zhou Su and see through the true nature of all things in the world. It was the most wonderful method. Bo Swansea was known as the richest god of wealth in Mount Fong Siyuan. The treasures he owned could be said to include the rare treasures of the 4 seas and the heavens. When Lin Sun was searching for treasures, the Divine Eye played an indispensable role. As the Divine Eye was opened, the scene in Lin Sun's field of vision suddenly changed. Under the ground of the huge Taoist field, there were Taoist patterns crisscrossing like a spider web, with strange and obscure fluctuations. The incense burners in front of the strong men who knelt on the ground were located in the center of these Taoist patterns. With the circulation of the Taoist pattern formation, the incense and the incense burner silently released a kind of undetectable power. When these strong men were worshipping devoutly, they didn't notice that wisps of power the great way from them were being extracted and poured into the incense burner in front of them. Seeing this scene, Lin Sun couldn't help but be shocked. This enormous Tao grounds was like a place of sacrifice. Through the Tao marking grand formation beneath the ground and the incense burner as a medium, it was like countless tentacles that took those experts that were worshipping piously as sacrifices for the sake of extracting the wish energy of the grand Tao. All living beings possessed the wish energy of all living beings, and every single cultivator had once established a grand wish of the Saint Tao when they attained the Saint Realm, and it could be considered as the wish energy of the grand Tao. This was a boundlessly mysterious power. Some sages could even be bestowed the title of sage with the power of the great Tao's wishes. For example, on the ascension platform of Kunlun ruins, Lin Sun became a sage by relying on his own wish power of the Great Way and obtained the supreme inheritance left by the master of mountain heart and mind. This kind of miraculous, great Tao power of will was something that no one could detect during cultivation. However, the great Tao that every cultivator pursued would be affected by the great Tao power of will. For example, when Lin Sun was a saint, he had made a great wish, which was, "When I become a saint, my heart is the heavenly heart. My Tao is the great way. When my Tao is proven, crowned with eternity, crowning my head, I will wear immortality as my clothes. With fortune as my boots, I will tread on my feet." After he became a saint, the great way he pursued was inextricably related to the great wish of the Saint Tao that he had established. But now, the forces of the Hidden Land realm were actually using top-secret methods to extract and collect the power of the will of the great path that belonged to those cultivators through the Taoist pattern formation diagram. Such behavior could simply be called evil and unorthodox, and it caused one to shudder with fear. Collecting so much wish energy of the Great Way. What on earth does the Hidden Land realm want to do? Lin Sun's heart was also in turmoil. Nearly 1/3 of the 33 territories in the Dark World were under the control of the Hidden Land realm. In each of these territories, there were countless cities. If there was a Xitigarbha temple in each city in these territories, extracting the wish energy of the Great Way from those devout worshippers all year round. How amazing would the number be? Sure enough, there is no such cheap thing in the world. Everyone who wants to seek shelter from the Hidden Land realm doesn't seem to pay any Taoist gems, but what they send out is their own wish power. Lin Sun sighed inwardly. Today, he accidentally discovered this truth, which made him increasingly disgusted and repelled the Hidden Land realm. These bald donkeys regarded their opponents as heretics, but they were perhaps the biggest heretics among Buddhist cultivators. Just as Lin Sun was about to leave, he suddenly noticed that on the other side of the vast Taoist field, a group of familiar figures stood there. It was a white-haired elder, Fei Lang, and Lan Ling beside them. There were 2 black-robed monks accompanying them. One was a thin, dark-skinned, middle-aged man with cultivation in the 3rd level of the Emperor-to-be realm. The other was an old monk with wrinkles all over his face. Like the white-haired elder, he was in the 1st level of the Emperor-to-be realm. They were talking through their divine senses, so Lin Sun couldn't hear what they were talking about. Lin Sun frowned and hid in the crowd without leaving a trace. He wanted to see what the white-haired elder and these people were here for. Not long after, the incense in each incense burner burned out. A group of black-robed monks walked out in a line and put away the incense burners. At the same time, they placed new incense burners on the Taoist field. Only then did the strong men kneeling in the Taoist field rise to their feet and respectfully salute the huge Buddhist shrines before turning around and leaving. Obviously, every 7 days, they needed to worship devoutly and offer sacrifices for the time it takes to burn an incense stick. Lin Sun noticed that the incense burners that had been taken away were all gathered together and placed on a huge black lotus seat. The black lotus seat glowed, and the incense burners suddenly disappeared. At this moment, the old monk who was talking with the white-haired elder and his group stepped forward and raised his hand. The black lotus seat turned into the size of a fist and was held in his hand. Then, the old monk turned back and handed the object to the white-haired elder with a smile. When Lin Sun was about to continue watching, he suddenly heard an indifferent and deep voice. Now it's your turn. Remember, when you worship, you need to open your mind and be devout and grateful. If you dare to have any disloyalty, you will be captured immediately. A black-robed monk stood not far away, looking at the place where Lin Sun stood, and said solemnly. Suddenly, a group of strong men who had been waiting in that area like Lin Sun came to the huge Taoist field one after another and knelt down in front of the incense burners with a pious look. Obviously, the sacrifice also needed to be carried out in batches. Soon, Lin Sun was left standing there alone. The black-robed monk said in a deep voice, "Why don't you go? Don't you know that if you want to get the blessing of our hidden land realm, you should keep a pious heart and worship here? For us cultivators, we don't kneel to the sky or the earth. We are not afraid of demons and Buddhas. If our heads are cut off, we will die. If our knees are broken, we will never be able to stand up again in this life." Lin Sun sighed softly and felt a little emotional in his heart. What he saw today was an eye-opener for him, and there was a lingering disgust in his heart. As he said, he was about to turn around and leave. The black-robed monk's face darkened, and he said, "You entered the Ksitigarbha temple and still want to leave like this. What do you think our hidden land realm is? If you don't kneel down now, don't blame me for being rude." His cold voice attracted many people's attention. Many black-robed monks came from different places and stared at Lin Sun indifferently, as if he dared to disobey, he would be sentenced to death as a heretic. Hey, isn't that the arrogant guy? The movement here also attracted the attention of the white-haired old man and his people. Fei Lang looked surprised and said, "Why is he here?" Lan Ling next to him showed a playful look and said, "It seems that there will be a good show." "Do you know this person?" asked the old monk. "I don't know him. I only met him once over 10 days ago," the white-haired old man said calmly. The old monk nodded and smiled at Lan Ling. "If you want to see a good show, it's easy." As he said this, he waved his hand and gave an order to the black-robed monk in the distance. "Mu He, finish this man quickly. Don't disturb the peace here." The black-robed monk called Mu. He was the one who threatened Lin Sun. Hearing this, his eyes flashed, and he also gave an order. "This man is a heretic. He deliberately came to make trouble. Capture him, destroy his body, and refine his soul into lamp oil. Only in this way can he atone for his sins." Yes, the black-robed monks took the order and left. The atmosphere suddenly became extremely solemn. Lin Sun originally planned to leave. Even though he hated this place, he knew that destroying the Ksitigarbha temple would not make any difference to the hidden land realm. But he didn't expect that in the blink of an eye, he would become a heretic again. Moreover, from the tone of the black-robed monk, it was obvious that he planned to kill Lin Sun and refine his soul into lamp oil. Lin Sun couldn't help but sigh again. "You are courting death. Don't blame me for being ruthless. Kill." A group of black-robed monks rushed towards Lin Sun. They all looked indifferent, as if they had no emotions. Their bodies were covered with dark Buddhist light, which made them extremely powerful. Boom! But their attacks hadn't even arrived before Lin Sun when they exploded into pieces in unison, and they transformed into a rain of light that scattered down. Some treasures even shattered on the spot and emanated ear-piercing explosions. The black-robed monk's pupils shrank, but they were not afraid. Instead, they continued to rush towards Lin Sun. This was the successor of the Ksitigarbha temple. They were not afraid of life and death at all. They would not give up until they achieved their goals. This was also the most frightening thing to all practitioners. Unfortunately, they met Lin Sun this time. "Since you like to make people kneel so much, then all of you kneel." Lin Sun looked indifferent and stood still. But as his voice came out, it exploded in the hearts of the black-robed monks like thunder, producing a terrifying and boundless power. In an instant, as if they were struck by lightning, they twitched all over and fell to the ground with a series of thuds. Blood flowed from their 7 apertures, and they let out muffled groans.